Chapter 203. Xiao Huan turned, smiled sweetly at Wild Dog Taoist, said, "Priest, then please take care of me in future." Wild Dog quickly stood up, said, No problem. If there is any rough work, just let me do it." Taniska snorted from afar. At this moment, suddenly a cold and calm voice was heard outside the pavilion, said, "So you came here." Wild Dog Taoist's body shook. Turned his head to look. Xiao Huan had already cried out, "Ah, it's you." On the ancient path outside the pavilion stood a young man, expressionless, a gray monkey on his shoulder. It was ghostly. It was the beginning of autumn, although it was noon, but the sun was not as scorching as summer. A cool breeze blew in from outside the pavilion. Just that in the pavilion, the atmosphere with the arrival of Ghostly, this uninvited guest, suddenly turned silent. Wild Dog Taoist's face alternated between red and white, sat at the side, his eyes staring at the ground, looked really nervous. Ghostly was still expressionlessly standing at the other side, did not look at Wild Dog Taoist, instead focused on Taniska. Xiao Huan looked at Wild Dog Taoist, and then at Ghostly, after a long while carefully said, "Injong." "Ghostly Gongzi Yu, why are you here?" Ghostly glanced at her, said, "I am here to look for your grandfather." Taniska was surprised, said, "Look for me?" Ghostly nodded, said, "Yes, I would like to ask Senior a question." Xiao Huan immediately felt relieved, secretly smiled at Wild Dog, told him not to worry, and then turned to Ghostly with interest, said, "Ah, you are such a powerful person. What do you want to ask my grandfather?" While speaking, she suddenly saw Xiao Hui on Ghostly's shoulder, a pair of round eyes turning, grinning at her. She couldn't help but felt a surge of fondness, smiled and said, "Ha! I'm the one who gave you the candied haws. Do you still remember me?" Z. The monkey, Xiao Hui cried out, nodded incessantly, suddenly jumped up from Ghostly's shoulder, jumped into Xiao Huan's arms. Seemed like this monkey had a good impression of the candied haws. Xiao Huan's smile widened, stretched out her hand to catch it. Unexpectedly, it sank. It was unexpectedly heavy. She almost dropped it to the ground. Luckily, her reaction was fast and quickly increased her strength before she stabilized her body and carried Xiao Hui. But she was surprised. It had only been a few days, and Xiao Hui did not seem to have grown much. How could its weight suddenly increase by almost half? It was really strange. Ghostly watched Xiao Huan teasing Xiao Hui, giggling incessantly at the side, looking very happy. Deep in his eyes, there seemed to be a faint smile, but immediately disappeared. He turned and faced Zhou Yixian. Taniska shrugged his shoulders and said, "I'm an old man who is only 9 buckets tall and knowledgeable. There is nothing in the world that I do not know. But it's strange that you should ask this old man for advice. What's the matter? Just say it." Ghostly ignored his boasting, indifferently said, "That day in the Death Marsh, there was a fish-headed monster that ambushed your granddaughter. Do you still remember?" Taniska was stunned. Wild Dog Taoist and Xiao Huan heard it and looked over at the same time. Xiao Huan, while carrying Xiao Hui, said, "Yes, that monster was extremely fierce. If not for Ghostly Gongzi and Pinger Sister's timely help, I would have been killed by it." Ghostly was still looking at Taniska, said, "You said that monster was one of the southern border's 63 tribes, the fish people, is it?" Taniska was silent for a moment, said, "That's right." Ghostly cupped his hands and said, "Not sure if Senior knows anything about this fish people tribe." Taniska glanced at Ghostly, said, "Why are you suddenly interested in this?" Ghostly pondered for a moment, nodded, and said, "Since I am asking Senior, there is no need to hide the rest from you. After you all left, my men seemed to be ambushed by a group of monsters similar to the fish people, suffered heavy casualties, so I want to find out more from Senior." Taniska frowned, his body gradually straightened. His eyes showed a pondering look, but he did not speak. Ghostly was also not in a hurry, quietly stood at the side. After a long while, Taniska suddenly said, "The people who died under your hands, did they die in a cruel way? The corpses were mostly chopped into pieces, too horrible to look at." "Ah." This soft cry was made by Xiao Huan. Looking at her shocked face, she was obviously very shocked. Ghostly slowly nodded. His eyes looked deeply at the old man in front of him, said, "That's right. It is exactly so." Taniska nodded and said, "Then it can't be wrong. It must be done by the southern border's 10,000 Great Mountains, 63 tribes. This tribe had a strange appearance. When it was born, it had a fish head and a human body. According to their tribe's legend, it was the offspring of the ancient fish god and a human girl, so they had always considered themselves as the descendants of the fish god. This tribe has always been cruel and bloodthirsty, and believed that no matter animal or human, after the massacre, only by chopping the corpses into pieces can the ghost be killed at the same time to avoid future troubles. So in their hands, no matter animal or human, most of them can't even keep a whole corpse. Suddenly a strange sound came from the side. Both of them looked. Xiao Huan's face was pale, her brows tightly frowned, looked a little nauseous. Tanis Ka shook his head slightly, sighed. The world is so big, there are many more cruel things that you still don't know. Ghostly naturally would not be like Xiao Huan, but he also frowned slightly, said, How come we have never heard of this kind of savage tribe before? Tanis Ka indifferently said, You have always lived in Central Plains. Naturally, you don't understand this kind of savage tribe. In the southern border, 10,000 Great Mountains. Everywhere are dangerous rivers and mountains. The people there eat raw meat and drink blood, completely different from the civilized people in Central Plains. But those tribes have always been used to the place where their ancestors lived, and on a road connecting Central Plains and southern border is one of the three great good sects, Funxiang Valley. Occasionally a few barbarians would run over, but most of them were killed by Funxiang Valley disciples with their celestial skills, so Central Plains has never known the details of the southern border tribes. When I was young, I roamed the world, went to the southern border 10,000 Great Mountains, then I know a thing or two. Ghostly slowly nodded his head, but the glint in his eyes gradually brightened, said, Then according to what Senior has said, occasionally a foreign race coming in, it is still understandable, but for such a large group of foreign races to enter Central Plains without a sound, and even to the Death Marsh, which is no less than 10,000 miles from the southern border, is simply impossible. Unless there is something wrong with Funxiang Valley guarding southern border. Tanis Ka suddenly stretched, lazily said, That is your problem. I am too lazy to care. Ghostly pondered for a moment, nodded and said, Thank you, Senior. After speaking, he turned around and saw Xiao Huan hugging Xiao Hui and playing with it. From the corner of her eyes, she saw Ghostly looking over, couldn't help but smiled and said, This monkey of yours is so cute. Right? Why did it suddenly become so much heavier? And also look at its forehead, there is such a deep gray mark, as if it has an extra eye. Hee, isn't it monkey? While speaking, Xiao Huan made a face at Xiao Hui. Xiao Hui grinned and wagged its tail behind it. Ghost Li's heart moved. Ever since that day in the Celestial Emperor Treasury, Xiao Hui drank that mysterious liquid and swallowed that strange stone. It was as if drunk and slept for 2 days and 2 nights. After waking up, it did not seem to eat anything, but its weight suddenly increased by a lot, and its appearance also gradually started to change. Its fur color became brighter and glossier, especially that gray mark on its forehead. It became more and more obvious. But other than these, Xiao Hui did not have any other changes. It was still the same gluttonous and playful. Initially, Ghostly was still worried, but seeing that Xiao Hui did not have any abnormalities, he gradually relaxed. Right now, he paused, shifted his gaze to Wild Dog Taoist. Wild Dog Taoist glanced at him. His eyes could not help but show some fear. Ghostly indifferently said, Do you intend to follow them in the future? Wild Dog Taoist was silent for a moment, said, Yes. Ghostly said, I once told you before, do you still remember? Nien leader, these people will come and find you anytime. Wild Dog Taoist's face was gloomy, but he looked at Xiao Huan, still said, I know, I also do not care. It was them who betrayed the sect. Do they still have the face to come and see me? Ghostly intentionally or unintentionally glanced at Xiao Huan, and then looked away, said, Since you want to be like this, then it's up to you. Wild Dog Taoist was surprised, raised his head, as if he did not expect Ghostly to be so easy to talk to. Ghostly did not care about him, walked to the side and called out to Xiao Hui. Xiao Hui with a swoosh scuttled down from Xiao Huan's bosom. In a few leaps jumped up to Ghost Li's shoulder. Xiao Huan was surprised, felt reluctant, and said, You are leaving just like this? Ghostly nodded, cupped his hands to Zhou Yixian, and then green light floated up below him, instantly turned into a brilliant green light, charged up to the sky, and soon disappeared into the horizon. Watching that person's figure disappear, Wild Dog Taoist suddenly heaved a sigh of relief. As if Ghostly was just standing there, there was an invisible force pressuring him till he could not breathe. Xiao Huan saw it and was about to laugh at him when suddenly she heard a gust of wind behind her and a gentle voice softly said, "Sister, we meet again." Xiao Huan was surprised before she could react. She already laughed out, said, "Pinger's sister." Looking back, it was indeed the charming and peerless Jean Pinger, smiling and standing behind her, not knowing when did she appear. Wild Dog Taoist was after all an evil sect member and was fearful of Jean Pinger. His expression looked uncomfortable, but Xiao Huan and Jean Pinger were on good terms. She was delighted to see her, pulled her, and laughed nonstop. Jean Pinger, like an elder sister, patted Xiao Huan's head lovingly, and then intentionally or unintentionally glanced at the sky, said, "Xiao Huan's sister, the reason I came to find you all today is actually to ask your grandfather a few questions." Xiao Huan, Zhou Yixian, including Wild Dog, were stunned. Jean Pinger indifferently said to Zhou Yixian, "Regarding the southern border strange tribe fish people, I still have a few questions to consult you." Zhou Yixian was speechless, frowned. Jean Pinger's eyes, before she asked, again lightly looked towards the horizon. High up in the sky, among the white clouds, indistinctly a light shuttled through the clouds, gradually heading towards the south. Chapter 204. Late at night. Qingyan Hill, small bamboo valley. The sky was dark, no moon or stars visible. Endless darkness enveloped small bamboo valley. Lu Sweki, dressed in white, stood alone on the full moon platform behind small bamboo valley. This full moon platform was actually the most famous place in small bamboo valley, together with Qingyan Hill Tongtian Peak's Cloud Sea Como Rainbow Bridge, listed as one of Qingyun's 6 sceneries, full moon. Small Bamboo Valley Rear Mountain was also covered with dense bamboo forest, but different from Big Bamboo Valley Rear Mountain's black bamboo. Small Bamboo Valley produced in abundance another type of strange bamboo, tears bamboo. This type of bamboo was emerald green in color, the bamboo body slender and long, having almost half of the bamboo joints, but the bamboo was extremely tough. Known as the best in the world, even ordinary woodcutters could not chop it. But the most famous part of the tears bamboo was that on the emerald green bamboo body, little pink spots, like a gentle lady's sad tear stains, extremely beautiful. And the origin of Small Bamboo Valley's name also came from this. As for the full moon platform, it was actually a lonely cliff suspended in mid-air. Other than the back half, which was connected to the mountain, most of it was suspended in the air. It was said that when the moonlight was bright at night, the moonlight would slowly rise from the foot of the mountain, slowly climbing up to the full moon platform. And when the moonlight completely illuminated the full moon platform, it was also when the moon was in the sky. And when the full moon platform was at its most beautiful, it was also at that time the moonlight would suddenly shine brilliantly from the smooth full moon platform rocks, instantly illuminating the entire Small Bamboo Valley. And at that moment, the people standing on the full moon platform, almost like standing in a fairyland. And even more, it was said that on the night of the full moon, which only appeared once every 60 years, it would make people feel as if they were standing on the bright moon. That feeling of excitement really made people yearn for it. But tonight was a dark and windy night. Evidently, it was not the time to appreciate full moon's beautiful scenery. Right now, not only this full moon platform at the back of Small Bamboo Valley, even at the front of the mountain where the disciples resided, it was also a patch of darkness. Evidently, everyone had already fallen asleep. Only Lu Sweki, for some reason, came to this isolated and desolate place alone. Tianya, which never left her side, was still behind her, gently emitting a gentle blue light in the darkness, illuminating some places around. The cold night wind blew over, gently fluttering her snow-white clothes. At the side of her temples, there were a few strands of soft hair, blown messily by the wind, brushing past her fair face, but she seemed to not notice at all, silently standing at the very front of the cliff of the full moon platform, staring blankly into the distance. The mountain wind gradually became stronger, and her clothes began to flutter in the wind. If one took another step forward, it would be a stretch of darkness, a bottomless abyss. At the edge of the cliff, in the dim light, the woman in white stood alone. Bit by bit, something appeared in the depths of her heart. It was originally a gentle feeling, but how did it slowly turn into sadness? Every hit was like an invisible blade stabbing deep into his heart. The mark engraved in the depths of his heart was actually a person's face. Lovesickness, bone deep, in the middle of the night, in a secluded place, she slowly opened her arms. In front of her was the boundless darkness, as if the world was boundless. The wind was so strong, rushing in her bosom, seemed to want to tear her apart. The darkness beneath her feet also suddenly stirred. A dark hand stretched out from nowhere, entangled her body, trying to pull her into the abyss. Just as she seemed to be in a daze, only quietly staring, the wind blowing against her frail body, like a lily blooming in the darkness. The night deep, that inexplicable coldness seeped into every inch of her skin. Only her mind was suddenly blazing hot. The tenderness that was hidden deep in her heart was suddenly like a burning flame, bursting forth and then condensing into a face. Chong Lang, a sharp sound, suddenly rang in the night, reverberated far away. Tianya, celestial sword unsheathed, blossomed with resplendent light in the darkness. The white figure then leapt up, caught Tianya in mid-air. The biting cold mountain wind abruptly swept up, accompanying that white figure on the full moon platform, started an incomparably beautiful sword dance. The autumn water, like falling from the sky, turned into the boundless Milky Way, twisting and turning in the slender hands, flowed joyfully in the night. Sometimes soaring to the sky, sometimes landing, sometimes transforming into silver flowing light, yearning for that peerless face, sometimes scattering into the stars in the sky, shining brightly. Ainen on this full moon platform bit her lips deeply, closed her eyes, her body like drifting with the wind, like fluttering cotton, like a cold flower, dancing out the poignant beauty of this world. She turned into white light, exhausted all her strength, her face so pale, faint beads of perspiration could still be seen, but she still did not stop. Maybe only when her body was tired could she forget everything. So she danced that figure in the night, serene and beautiful. Ding. A light, crisp sound. Tanya's celestial sword slowly fell from her hand. The sharp sword tip completely disregarded the hard rocks, like piercing snow, silently pierced into the rocks. The brilliant and beautiful white figure slowly lowered. The darkness quietly crept up. Who in the darkness, panting softly? Beads of water gently dripped down, landed on the rocks. Maybe it was the sweat after exhaustion. She panted softly, and then slowly calmed down. Her gaze lifted, but there was a faint sense of loss. Not knowing when, she had danced to the back of the full moon platform. Before her was a stretch of bamboo forest. In front of her was the slender and gentle tears bamboo. Under the faint light, little by little tear stains, like a heartbroken girl. She stared blankly and then suddenly laughed out. Laughing soundlessly seemed to carry some bitterness, following which she did not care about the dust on the ground, did not care about the pure white clothes on her. Her back leaning against the tears bamboo, sat on the ground. Looked up at the sky. The firmament was boundless. The night breeze blew over, as if there was a faint familiar smell. She closed her eyes, breathed deeply. So after exhaustion, that face in her heart was even more profound. The past, bit by bit, seemed to be engraved in her heart, unable to be erased. Just like that day outside the Celestial Emperor treasury, he impulsively pulled her hand to save her, completely forgetting his own danger. Her eyes were still closed, but a faint smile appeared on her lips. And then, thinking, until she thought of that last moment, the mysterious words that appeared and fluttered around them. She then realized those words were deeply engraved in her mind. Maybe this way she could forget him? She spoke to her own deep heart, although she herself did not believe it, but her mouth still softly recited, "Heaven and earth heartless, treating all living things as straw dogs." In the deep night, the ancient words like a curse softly reverberated in the darkness. Qing Yun Hill, Tong Tian Peak, Founder's Ancestral Hall. The lighting in the great hall was still the same, as usual, appeared somewhat dim. Sect head Reverend Daoxian held 3 incense sticks in his hands, respectfully bowed to the innumerable ancestral tablets, and then stepped forward, inserted the sandalwood incense in his hands into the incense burner on the offering table. Beside him stood that destitute old man who took care of the Founder's Ancestral Hall. The faint yellow light shone on his face. Lines after lines of deep wrinkles seemed to be engraved on his face. Daoxian turned his head. His eyes landed on his face, suddenly said, "You seem to have aged again." That old man was expressionless, indifferently said, "Time rushes people. What's so strange about that?" Daoxian smiled, seemed to want to say something. Suddenly a voice was heard from outside the hall. "Senior, disciple Lin Jingyu has returned, come to pay his respects to Senior." Daoxian frowned slightly, did not speak. That old man unhurriedly took a step forward, but did not walk out of the hall, only raised his voice and said, "It's you. When did you return?" Lin Jingyu respectfully said, "Disciple returned the day before after reporting to sect head. First returned to Dragon Head Valley to visit head senior brother. Once I am free, I came over to pay my respects to Senior." A faint smile seemed to appear on that old man's lips, said, "Oh, so it's like that. Then wait outside for a while. I still have a guest here." Lin Jingyu seemed to be startled. Usually this Founder's Ancestral Hall did not have many visitors. Unexpectedly, there was a guest today. But he had trained under this mysterious old man for 10 years, had long treated him as a benevolent teacher, immediately acknowledged, and quietly waited at the side. Chapter 205. Reverend Daoxian slowly walked a few steps, stood in the shadows of the great hall, looked out from the door under the warm sunlight. Lin Jingyu, carrying the Dragon Slayer sword on his back, dressed in a long robe, a jade belt around his waist, his face handsome, respectfully standing at the side of the Founder's Ancestral Hall, patiently waiting. He quietly watched for a while, said, "This child is a piece of good material, regardless of aptitude or temperament. He is the best of the best." That old man's footsteps looked slow, walked to his side, also looked out, said, "Then why didn't you take him in as your disciple back then?" Reverend Daoxian gazed at Lin Jingyu, who was standing outside the hall. That youth was at his prime. No matter from which angle, he exuded such a vigorous vigor and pressing edge, made people feel that he was different from the others. Reverend Daoxian suddenly smiled, a very, very bland kind of smile, then turned around, faced that old man, and said, "Because he is too similar to a person, temperament, expression, even his aptitude, are so similar to that person. If he is by my side, I will not be able to sleep." The facial muscles of the old man beside him seemed to suddenly twitch. Reverend Daoxian turned around, looked at him indifferently. After a long time, suddenly shook his head, then smiled and said, "I am joking with you." Before he finished, his brows frowned. Then his hand touched his chest, quietly coughed a few times. That old man glanced at his chest, and then looked at Reverend Daoxian's slightly pale face, indifferently said, "It has already been 10 years. Your injury is still not healed?" Reverend Daoxian did not speak, but his coughing sounds gradually became louder, and then his expression gradually turned ugly. After a long while, his coughing slowly subsided. Reverend Daoxian heaved a long sigh, turned around, no longer looking at Lin Jingyu outside, walked to the altar that enshrined countless Qing Yun sect founders' memorial tablets, stared blankly for a while, then quietly said, "I also did not expect Zhu Xian sword's backlash power to be so powerful." That old man slowly walked over, stretched out his hand, and took a piece of rag, gently wiped the heavy offering table, said, "The Zhu Xian sword's power is so great," adding the Zhu Xian sword formation, "It is enough to defy the heavens. This kind of vicious object goes against the will of heaven. When you use the Zhu Xian ancient sword, you should know." Reverend Daoxian indifferently said, "Of course I know, on the stone tablet in the illusory moon cave, from Master Qingyi down, every generation of masters have left a strict order. Unless it is absolutely necessary, do not use this sword." The old man slowly wiped the offering table. His movements were very slow, as if he had been wiping it for many years. That was why he was so focused. His eyes looked at the table, suddenly smiled, and said, "Actually, I have also thought before, maybe if you use the Zhu Xian ancient sword a few more times, maybe you will die even faster than me." Reverend Daoxian looked at that old man, stooped back, his pupils suddenly contracted. After a while, slowly turned and walked out. "Are you leaving?" The old man's bleak voice came from behind him. Reverend Daoxian stopped, but did not turn back. After a while, his voice unhurriedly came over. "Do you still remember what I said when I saved you?" That old man stood in the dark shadows, did not reply. Reverend Daoxian also did not turn back. A strange aura seemed to be drifting in this founder's ancestral hall. After a long while, Reverend Daoxian's indifferent voice was heard saying, "I saved you because I owe you, but I will not let you live longer than me." That old man's body had already disappeared into the shadows, motionless. Reverend Daoxian then walked out, left this founder's ancestral hall. Lin Jingyu was waiting patiently outside, suddenly saw sect head Reverend walking out from the founder's ancestral hall, got a shock, and quickly paid his respects. Reverend Daoxian glanced at him. A strange glint seemed to flash in his eyes, and then nodded his head and left. Lin Jingyu watched sect head Reverend leave. For some reason, when Reverend Daoxian came out from the founder's ancestral hall, he suddenly felt that sect head Reverend's face seemed strangely pale. Lin Jingyu was thinking to himself from the ancestral hall. That old man's voice was heard. Unhurriedly said, "Is it Jingyu? Come in." Lin Jingyu hurriedly replied, "Yes." Speaking, he walked into the hall. He had just walked into the hall. Lin Jingyu immediately felt a chill on his body. At the same time, the surroundings also turned dark. He couldn't help but frowned. For the past 10 years, he had been following this mysterious old man here to take care of the founder's ancestral hall. But from the day he came, he felt that this founder's ancestral hall was very strange. No matter what it was always gloomy, and yet this place was not completely dark. Instead, before those ancestors' memorial tablets, there were many incense sticks and candles lit, but the dim candles' faint light seemed to only exist to set off the deeper darkness here, unable to rid the great hall of the gloomy and eerie feeling. But he had, after all, lived here for 10 years, and he admired that old man standing in the shadows even more. He had long forgotten about this strange place. Immediately, he respectfully bowed to that old man, said, "Senior, disciple is back." For the past 10 years, Lin Jingyu had more than once wanted to address this old man as teacher, but without exception, he was rejected by this mysterious old man. Therefore, Lin Jingyu had always addressed him as senior. Anyway, even sect head Reverend sometimes looked at this old man in a different light. Presumably, he must also once be a senior in Qingyan sect. That old man smiled, walked out from the shadows, assessed Lin Jingyu from head to toe, saw that he had been out for a few months. His face looked weathered, but his entire person was even more spirited. His eyes couldn't help but revealed a slight gratification. Harmoniously said, "This time out, you didn't get injured, right?" Lin Jingyu smiled and said, "Speaking of injuries, it's not that I didn't get injured, but they were all superficial wounds, not worth mentioning. Just a pity this time out in the Death Marsh. I returned without any results." Immediately, he briefly narrated the Death Marsh battle. By now, the news of the evil faction internal strife, the 3 great sects exterminating Changshan Hall, had already spread throughout the world. Lin Jingyu also heard it on his way back, and now he also told it to this old man. But this old man was obviously not interested in Changshan Hall survival. When he heard that one of the 4 great sects of the evil faction was exterminated, his expression did not even change, only quietly listened to Lin Jingyu. After Lin Jingyu finished, this old man was silent for a moment, suddenly said, "You said this time the other 3 great sects of the evil faction, including Wandu clan, sent a large number of people over?" Lin Jingyu nodded and said, "Yes." That old man seemed to hesitate for a moment, but eventually still said, "Did you see Song Song?" Lin Jingyu's body shook. He was stunned, but then he turned silent, his expression extremely complicated. After a long while, he then said, "No, senior." The old man saw the expression on his face, suddenly said, "Do you hate him very much?" A trace of pain flashed past Lin Jingyu's eyes. He slowly said, "I also don't know, but good and evil cannot coexist. Anyway, even if we meet again, we will already be irreconcilable enemies." Humph! That old man suddenly sneered. Lin Jingyu was shocked, said, "Senior, what is it?" That old man slowly shook his head, turned around. His eyes looked up. Reflected in his eyes were the innumerable Qin Yun sect founders' memorial tablets high up, the dim candlelight in front of their memorial tablets. Right now, it looked like their eyes, silently watching the people in the ancestral hall. He brought you up from young, imparted you Taoism skills, taught you how to be a person. In the end, he even passed down the Dragon Slayer sword to you. Has he ever done anything wrong to you? That old man suddenly said indifferently. Lin Jingyu slowly shook his head, quietly said, "He has always been very good to me. In the past, I also revered him like a deity, like a father, extremely revered." But Lin Jingyu did not continue. That old man also suddenly became silent. After a long time, that old man then gave a bitter laugh, with endless sorrow, facing those memorial tablets and candlelight, quietly said, "Actually, Song Song, he is just a pitiful person who took the wrong path." Chapter 206. The Southern Border Evil Lands. In the extreme south of the Divine Land, it was said that there were barren mountains and unruly rivers, rich in poisonous insects and ferocious beasts. And the most obvious boundary with the Central Plains was in the extreme south, suddenly like a flat land rising, lofty majestic mountain ranges connected one after another, towering into the clouds, separating the north and south. Since ancient times, the fertile Central Plains, very few people went to the southern border, for no other reason. First, the roads were steep. Second, there were too many ferocious beasts and poisonous insects, miasma and foul waters, and the land was barren, unable to be cultivated. Later on, not knowing when the world started to spread that in the endless mountains of the southern border, there were all kinds of barbaric tribes. They ate raw meat and drank blood, cruel and bloodthirsty. Among them, there were even terrifying beastmen who ate raw human flesh. Since then, no one dared to go. Instead, the world was shaken, worried day and night that those tribes would one day suddenly run out from those mountains, invade the Central Plains, harm the world. However, there weren't any rumors of the barbarian tribe harming people in the last 1,000 years. Although there were occasional rumors of strange monsters appearing in the southern border's borderlands, most of them died without a trace and were gradually forgotten by the people. In this day and age, even for the people living at the border of the southern border, only mothers would say something like, "If you don't listen to me, those monsters from the barbarian tribe will come and catch you," when they were coaxing their children to sleep at night. Usually, no one would think about whether these strange races really existed deep in the mountains, much less in the Central Plains that was thousands of miles away. Speaking of which, that 10,000 great mountains shrouded in layers of fog had now become a place forgotten by the common people. However, even though the commoners had forgotten about these foreign races, there were still some cultivators of the Tao of refinement who had not. No matter good or evil faction, as long as the senior ones were, they would know that the reason why the southern tribes were unable to harm the world for the past 1,000 years, the good faction giant sect, Funxiang Valley, really deserved the credit. 10,000 majestic towering mountains separated the north and south. The Central Plains people were unable to go south. Those barbaric tribes also found it difficult to go north. But 1,000 years ago, an inconceivable lightning catastrophe descended from the sky. Within a radius of 1,000 miles, the common people died and were injured. After the catastrophe, someone discovered that in the lofty mountain range, the tremendous force of the heavenly thunder had actually split open a certain part of the mountain, revealing a pitch-black and gloomy path that was only 3 feet wide. It was also from that time onwards that in the 10,000 great mountains, there were strange barbarians hidden in the world, frequently harassing the people. The common people at the borders suffered unspeakably, until Funxiang Valley appeared. Funxiang Valley among the good faction sects. Its origin was the most mysterious and elusive. As early as 1,500 years ago, there were already disciples of this branch roaming the world. Just based on origin, only Qing Yun's sect and evil faction had a longer history than Funxiang Valley. Even Tianyin Temple could not be compared to it. But even so, this sect was usually very low-key. Although a few highly skilled cultivators would appear from time to time, their influence on the world situation was not great. Until 800 years ago, this sect found a valley near the southern border's dark tunnel and settled down. From then on, they called themselves Funxiang Valley, and in these 800 years, inconceivable masters emerged in large numbers, their power flourishing day by day. Until now, they were already on par with Qing Yun's sect and Tianyin Temple, becoming one of the three big good faction sections. And correspondingly, Funxiang Valley's current valley master Yin Elon was also a good faction giant who was on par with Qing Yun's sect, Reverend Daoxian, and Tianyin Temple Puhong Master. Just that this person had always been low-key, and just based on reputation, he could not be compared to the two of them. Because of the geographical location, Funxiang Valley almost instinctively took on the responsibility of guarding that dim path that was known locally as Black Hole. From then on, there were no more rumors of the barbarian monsters harassing the common people. Therefore, in the hearts of the local people, Funxiang Valley's reputation was extremely high, and they revered them as immortals. These information were all recorded in the evil faction Ghost King sect. Ghostly had also seen them in these 10 years, and now slowly flipped through them in his mind. Right now, it was already the third day after he asked Zhou Yixian about the news of the human fish tribe monsters. He had been rushing all the way and finally reached the vicinity of the 10,000 Great Mountains. It was already late at night. This night the bright moon hung high in the sky. The clouds were rather thick and few stars could be seen. But the clear moonlight spilled onto the mortal world and also lit up this mountain top where he was at. Ghostly stood on the hill, gazing towards the south, his brows slightly frowning. The monkey Xiao Hui was still crouching on his shoulder. In its hand was a wild fruit plucked from somewhere, munching on it with relish. Along the way, in the first 2 days, he still found the markings left by his subordinate Kill Living Monk, but today, Kill Living Monk had completely disappeared. But from information he left a few days ago, Kill Living Monk, who was proficient in tracking, had already confirmed that those mysterious human fish tribe were swiftly heading south. Their target was obviously returning to their southern border lair. Could it be Kill Living Monk had already clashed with those mysterious human fish tribe? Ghostly sighed softly. A trace of worry flashed past his eyes. The southern border barbarians were completely different from the Central Plains people. This had been mentioned many times in the Ghost King sect's remnant records. The people there did not know anything about true cultivation, but they seemed to have various kinds of strange witchcraft and strange skills, unimaginable. Kill Living Monk was not old and had a fiery temper, but among the new generation of Ghost King sect disciples, he was indeed an outstanding figure and usually followed Ghostly, was indeed a capable subordinate. This mysterious disappearance, Ghostly was indistinctly worried. Just that right now he was gazing ahead. The dark night was heavy. In the south there was a black figure, as if there was some enormous creature bearing its fangs and brandishing its claws in the night. Most likely, it was that legendary 10,000 Great Mountains. And somewhere below that mountain range was the legendary, mysterious Funxiang Valley. The southern border had always been Funxiang Valley's sphere of influence. For an evil faction disciple to enter alone, it was needless to say the danger. While Ghostly was deep in thought, suddenly he felt something, looked up at the sky, saw a lonely moon in the horizon, shuttling between the faint black clouds, as if suddenly it also had some demonic qualities. A dark red light suddenly appeared in the night sky, under the clear moonlight, swept past the horizon, towards a mountain top in the south, descended. Ghostly stared at that strange red light. Both of his brows gradually frowned. After a moment, he seemed to make up his mind, patted Xiao Hui on his shoulder, and then the green light under his feet returned, The soul-absorbing stick glimmered with faint light, supporting him, and Xiao Hui slowly rose up, suddenly increased its speed, chased after that red light. In the night sky, the black clouds gradually increased. That lonely moon in the horizon, its splendor also gradually dimmed. There seemed to be a kind of special southern border, dark demonic air, in this night, becoming thicker and thicker. That mysterious red light flew, for a while, landed on a mountain 10 miles south from the mountain where Ghostly was hiding. There were many mountains in the southern border. On the mountains there were also many vegetation, just that in the forest of this nameless small mountain, there was a desolate ancient temple. That red light landed in front of the ancient temple. A wave of light wavered. A withered old man appeared. He looked around. After making sure there was no one, he walked into the ancient temple. Desolate mountains and wild ridges. A desolate ancient temple. Yet someone came here in the middle of the night. Naturally, there was something unspeakable. After a while, in the shadows of the forest outside the ancient temple, Ghost Li's figure slowly appeared. His eyes assessed this nameless ancient temple and then looked up at the sky. The dark clouds in the night sky thickened, gradually covering the moonlight. His figure flickered as he silently swept towards the ancient temple. This ancient temple had obviously been abandoned for a long time. Broken fences and walls were everywhere. Even the main hall looked extremely damaged from the outside, with holes everywhere. The night breeze blew over coldly. The broken windows creaked and swayed. The low sounds in the night seemed especially desolate and indistinctly strange. Boom! A light sound, as if someone had lit a match. A weak light lit up in the main hall. Just that this light was dim and could only light up a little in the main hall. Slightly further away, it was still shrouded in darkness. GG. G. Suddenly, a wave of strange and indescribable sounds suddenly resounded in the hall. This sound was like the cries of ghosts in the middle of the night, and it was like the nocturnal movement of venomous insects. It instantly caused one's heart to go numb and feel extremely uncomfortable. Ghostly concealed himself in the darkness, quietly looked into the main hall. Under the dim light in the main hall, other than that old man, there were two other people. One of them looked about 30 years old, medium build, the other one, rather tall, but for some reason, his entire body was wrapped tightly in a cloak. Not even a bit of his head was revealed, and that strange sound was actually coming from under this person's cloak. The sound reverberated in the dark, ancient temple, becoming more and more demonic, like an evil ghost awakening. Ghostly watched coldly. It was also the first time he heard such strange words. Naturally, he did not know what it meant, but looking at the other two people's expressions, he knew there would be an outcome. As expected, after that mysterious person spoke for a while, he temporarily stopped. The middle-aged man beside him, who had been listening attentively, turned to the old man and said, "Tribe leader said, this time we returned without any achievement. Instead, our tribe lost manpower and exposed our tracks. It is all because of your inaccurate information." After the beast deity king heard, he already flew into a rage. When that middle-aged man said the two words beast deity, his voice suddenly turned low, and that tall figure wrapped in the cloak also seemed to tremble. That old man also frowned and said, "Our original agreement was to inform the beast deity king of the location of that celestial emperor Ming stone. According to what we know, that strange stone is indeed in the celestial emperor treasury in the Death Marsh. How can we blame our inaccurate information?" Chapter 207. He looked at that mysterious person under the cloak. A sneer suddenly flashed past his lips and said, "I'm afraid it is you all who are not capable enough." Once the words were spoken, that mysterious person in the cloak immediately replied, "GG. This kind of strange sound was repeated over and over again. Although Ghostly, who was hiding at the side, did not understand the meaning, but from the hurried and sharp sounds, it was obvious that the mysterious person was enraged. This mysterious person, Gigi, spoke for quite a while. The expression of the middle-aged man who was translating also gradually became unsightly. After waiting for him to stop with great difficulty, the middle-aged man hesitated for a moment before saying, "Clan leader said, Although they have never been to the deathly swamp, they also know that it has never been inhabited. But this time, there are suddenly countless cultivation experts from Central Plains. Naturally, your information is wrong. That elderly saw that the middle-aged man seemed to have finished speaking and could not help but was stunned. That mysterious person spoke for a long time, but when this middle-aged man translated, it was only this sentence. Most likely that the mysterious person in the middle had cursed, and this middle-aged man was unwilling to translate. That elderly hesitated for a moment, looked like he was still unwilling to fall out with the mysterious person, and said, "This time the appearance of the celestial emperor treasury. The omen is grand and shook the world. Most likely those Central Plains high-skilled cultivators also heard the news and went over. This is not something we can control." That mysterious person in the cloak was still angry and made another series of strange sounds. The middle-aged man listened attentively and nodded his head repeatedly, and then said to the elderly, tribe leader said, "That celestial Emperor Ming stone is extremely important to the beast deity king. The stakes are very high." This time they returned without any results. The beast deity king flew into a rage and killed a few of his tribesmen on the spot. That elderly heard until here, his face turned solemn, as if his mood was heavy, but a trace of ridicule still could not help but flash past. The person in the middle continued to translate. "So please quickly find out whose hands this gem had landed in, so that they can once again retrieve it and offer it to the beast deity king." Ghostly, who was hiding at the side, suddenly had a thought. He heard them mentioning the celestial Emperor Ming stone a few times. Could it be that it was the strange stone that was swallowed by Xiaohui? That elderly was silent for a moment and then nodded and said, "All right, leave this matter to us. Within 3 days, we will give you an answer." The mysterious person snorted. "GGG," said a few words. That middle-aged man nodded to the elderly and said, "Tribe leader agreed," said, "After 3 days, we will meet again here." The old man nodded and was about to say something when the mysterious person turned around and walked out directly. He didn't spare them a glance at all, and he was extremely arrogant and rude. The old man's expression changed as he looked at the back of the mysterious man. The middle-aged man hurriedly pulled him back and shook his head. The old man glanced at the middle-aged man and endured it. After the mysterious man's tall figure disappeared into the darkness, the old man suddenly spat and cursed. "What are you? Just a bunch of animals." The middle-aged man smiled apologetically and said, "Teacher uncle, don't be angry. Don't lower yourself to their level." That elderly sneered and said, "I can't be bothered with them." He turned and glanced at him, said, "Speaking of which, son too, you have lived among those animals for 3 years, learning their bird language. I'm afraid you must have suffered a lot, right?" The middle-aged man, who was called Sun Tu, smiled and said, "Disciple has received the sect kindness, but unfortunately my aptitude is shallow, and I am struggling to repay Valley Head and the various teacher uncles' kindness. Now that I have this opportunity, Disciple dare not to do my best." Ghostly suddenly heard the 2 words Valley Head. His heart immediately turned cold. That teacher uncle instead smiled, seemed to be very approving, patted Suintu's shoulder, suddenly sneered and said, "Luckily Valley Head is wise, knowing that I have always been composed, so he sent me to meet with those animals. If it was Shangwan Su, that old fellow, he would have spoiled everything on the spot." Sun Tu laughed dryly. His expression turned a little strange. His mouth mumbled a reply, but he seemed to not dare to talk about that Shangwan Su behind his back. Ghostly at the side did not question further. Shangwan Su was one of the top figures in the southern Funxiang Valley, although he had never roamed the world, but his reputation had long been established. Especially during the Qing Yun battle 10 years ago, Ghost King, even more ingenious, sent Zhou to disguise as Shangwan Su to ambush the Tian'an temple monks. It was indeed successful and almost put Qing Yun, Tian'an 2 big sects to death. At that time, Ghostly was still a Qing Yun disciple called Zhang Xiaofan, and was at the scene. Naturally, he had a deep impression of that name. Hearing the 2 of them calling that mysterious person animal, that mysterious person's identity seemed to be on the verge of being revealed, just that Funxiang Valley, which had always been awe-inspiring and righteous, right now actually revealed an unbelievably evil air. Ghostly coldly stared at the two people in the great hall. In the darkness, a cold and disdainful sneer on his lips. In the hall, the two of them discussed for a while more. Sun Tu blew out the candles in the great hall. The two of them walked out. Seemed like they wanted to leave this place. Ghostly frowned in the dark. When he was pondering, suddenly, a strange roar was heard from outside the ancient temple. Everyone in the ancient temple was shocked that Elder and Sun Tu stopped at the same time. The voice was mournful and angry, and it seemed to carry a trace of panic, but it sounded like some beast's roar and not a human's cry. Just that Ghostly tried to make sense of it. Immediately he could tell that the voice seemed to be made by that mysterious person in the cloak. His brows involuntarily frowned. At the same time, the Elder and Sun Tu also heard it. Immediately their countenances changed greatly. At the same time leapt into the air and flew out of the temple. Deep in the wild mountains, there was actually someone ambushing. The moonlight was cold, as if the evil color became heavier. Outside the ancient temple, behind a hill far away, a purple light suddenly blossomed in the night, charged to mid-air, and then struck down. Separated by several zhongs, Ghostly could also feel that piercingly cold, malevolent energy. His pupils shrank. In a moment, he already recognized what that weapon was. The two Fuanxiang Valley people flew over, but that elder's skills were obviously much higher than Sun Tu. In a short, while he was already several zhongs behind Sun Tu, at the same time a dark red celestial sword appeared in his hand, swiftly flew towards that purple light. Just that before he could reach the back of the hill, a loud roar was heard, filled with despair, reverberated in this dark night. That elder's countenance changed greatly. His steps became even faster. With a sound he had already flown over, Ghostly quietly followed from another direction, circled to the back of the hill. A bloody stench immediately hit him in the face. The cloak that had been cut in half slowly floated down from the air, dark red blood splattering everywhere. The mysterious figure who had revealed his true body was indeed a fish-headed, human-bodied murloc, but at this moment he was actually cut in half from head to crotch with a single slash. The corpse fell to the ground, but the murderer had already disappeared. That elder was shocked and angry at the same time. This murderer killed in an instant and then disappeared. This level of skills was really not to be underestimated. Although he did not like these fish people, but he knew that the Valley Master and these barbarians had important matters to discuss. This time someone actually attacked and killed under his eyes. If the other side pursued the matter, it would be hard for him to explain. At this time, Sun Tu also rushed to the scene, saw this bloody scene, and was immediately dumbstruck. The old man's face was extremely ugly. He suddenly soared up, the dark red light supporting his feet. He flew into the air and looked around, but all he could see was darkness in the vast forest. Where could he find the murderer? Suddenly, he loudly shouted, "Which expert is here? Please come out. Fuanxiang Valley Lu Shun will consult." This voice traveled far. After a while, in the forest and mountains, indistinctly echoed back. Everywhere, Lu Shun will consult. Lu Shun will consult. Just that other than that, there was no other sound. Lu Shun's eyes looked like they were about to spit fire. After a while he landed, spoke to Sun Tu swiftly. "You clean up the tribe leader's body and bring it back to the valley. The murderer did it not long ago. He must still be nearby. Even if I have to dig 3 chi underground, I will find this person." Sun Tu hurriedly nodded, said, "Teacher uncle, be careful." Before he finished, Lu Shun had already leapt up, disappeared into the darkness of the forest. Sun Tu turned around, looked at the two halves of the corpse on the ground. A bloody stench assailed his nostrils. He could not help but reveal a disgusted expression, spat. Ghostly slowly retreated, pondered for a moment in the dark, and carefully surveyed the surrounding terrain, following which his gaze landed on the ancient temple that he had just come out from. Immediately, quietly swept over. The night was cold. The dark clouds covered the moon. Although it had only been a while, but inside this ancient temple, it suddenly seemed to turn gloomy and dark. Only the occasional moonlight peeking out from the dark clouds would illuminate some places, but after a while, it returned to darkness again. Ghostly unhurriedly walked out, stood on the empty space in front of the great hall. a pair of eyes staring intently at the great hall. The cold wind blew. The broken window made a strange creaking sound in the darkness. Gongzi is really powerful. I can hide from Lu Shun, but I can't hide from you. In the darkness of the great hall, a faint voice suddenly sounded, gently drifting out. Chapter 208. Majestic Fox Mountain. Ghost King's Sect Headquarters. Under the desolate mountain, Ghost King's Sect Headquarters was hidden in a hard rock cave. In a winding tunnel, at a serene place, the long tunnel was empty. Only on both sides of the stone walls, every few zhongs a copper lamp embedded, illuminating the place. Yuji, with her face covered in black veil, her figure drifted, walking forward alone. Looking from afar, she looked like a ghost in the darkness. This place was already Ghost King's Sect's restricted area. Together with the cold ice cave where Bai Yao was, it was the most mysterious place in Ghost King's Sect, forbidden to ordinary disciples. But Yuji, as one of the four holy envoys, Vermilion Bird Identity, was one of the core members of Ghost King's Sect. Therefore, she could freely enter these places. Just that, she looked ahead at that faintly extending, as if it was an endless, deep tunnel. Her footsteps suddenly slowed down, looking like she was hesitating, but eventually still walked in. Deep in the shadows ahead, a few strange low growls seemed to be heard, like some beast growls. After walking through another long tunnel, the lights on both sides were getting dimmer and dimmer. Finally, after turning a corner, Yuji reached the end of the tunnel. There was a stone door with 3 words engraved on the lintel. Entrapped Dragon Watchtower. Yuji stared at the 3 words for a long time. The surroundings were quiet. Only the strange growls that were heard from time to time gradually became clearer. In the air, a faint smell of blood seemed to pervade. The black veil on her face moved, seemed to be shaking her head, softly sighed, and then walked into this stone door. Once inside, the space suddenly widened. Inside was actually an enormous grotto. Strange rocks protruded abruptly on the walls, all of different shapes. And in front of Yuji's stone door was a suspended stone path, winding forward, leading to the middle of the grotto. At this moment, she was actually in the air above this huge stone cave. Yuji obviously was not her first time here. Seeing such a scene, she did not show any surprise. After a moment of silence, walked along that narrow stone path. The upper part of the grotto was dark, but below the stone path, red light indistinctly glimmered, reflected up, instead made the upper part of the grotto walls look sinister. The smell of blood in the air was getting heavier. It was unknown whether the stone path in this huge cave was naturally formed or man-made. It just hung in the air like this. From afar, there was not a single stone pillar supporting it. It was really unimaginable. Yuji's black figure walked on the stone path. There was not a single sound of footsteps as she walked. It really gave off a ghostly atmosphere. But not long after, she saw the figure in front of her. Ghost King. At the end of the stone path, there was a 7-chi stone platform. Ghost King was standing on it, his hands clasped behind his back. Looking at him from behind, his figure was steady and heavy, as if he had a strange feeling of blending with this huge grotto. Yuji walked to his back and said in a low voice, "Sovereign." Ghost King turned around, nodded, smiled, and said, "You are here." The black veil covering Yuchi's face suddenly froze, as if she was startled. When the stone path reached this platform, it was considered to be the end. Ahead was an empty space. Correspondingly, the mysterious red light at the bottom of the grotto looked much brighter from here. When the Ghost King turned his head, the red light instantly shot out from his body, indistinctly making his face a little blurry. Even his eyes seemed to have a faint red glow. Ghost King did not seem to notice these, only said, "You come over." Yuji walked over and stood on the platform. Immediately her eyes lit up, without the stone path blocking. Everything at the bottom of the grotto could be seen clearly. Below this grotto was actually a huge blood pool. Fresh red blood filled the bottom of the huge grotto. She really did not know where did Ghost King's sect get so much fresh blood from. The thick smell of blood in the air must have come from below. In the blood pool, 2 huge beasts were soaking. One was the yellow bird from the Death Marsh, The other was the Eastern Sea Lubo Hills rare beast Kuenyo. More than half of these two ancient beast bodies were soaked in the blood water. At the same time, from the top of the blood pool, a dark red light shrouded their bodies. The place where the dark red light came from was the hidden dragon cauldron, which was suspended in the air by an unknown force. The location of the hidden dragon cauldron was quite far from where Ghost King and Yuji were standing, but Yuji could still see a black figure casting spells on the cauldron, just that it was blurry under the cover of the red light. But even so, she still knew who that was. Mr. Ghost, the most mysterious figure in evil sect Ghost King's sect. Yuji, as one of the four great holy envoys of Ghost King's sect in the previous generation, knew almost everything in Ghost King's sect like the back of her hand, but only this Mr. Ghost was an exception. The reason was very simple. This person was not originally from Ghost King's sect, but after the current Ghost King ascended to the position, a mysterious figure suddenly appeared beside him. Ghost King was extremely respectful to him and this mysterious figure. In the few times he made a move, the strange skills he displayed also moved Qinglong, Yuji, and the other Ghost King sect experts. But in Yuji's heart, she always had a deep vigilance against this person. The most important reason was, under Mr. Ghost's great push, Ghost King finally 10 years ago started to activate the Four Divinities Blood Formation. Ghost King's sect guarding magical weapon Hidden Dragon Cauldron. Its origin was mysterious and unfathomable, contained limitless spiritual power, neither good nor evil, extremely strange. And on the Hidden Dragon Cauldron, other than ancient patterns, there were also many mysterious inscriptions. Generations of Ghost King's sect founders were unable to decipher them. But in the current Ghost King's generation, his mind was all-encompassing, really a rare talent, and coincidentally, Mr. Ghost, who seemed to specialize in this kind of mysterious inscriptions, suddenly appeared beside him. The two of them together actually deciphered these mysterious inscriptions. The inscriptions on the Hidden Dragon Cauldron recorded a kind of strange formation called Four Divinities Blood Formation. It required the spiritual power of four kinds of strange beasts from the ancient prehistoric times to trigger the Hidden Dragon Cauldron's own strange power, and then become an unparalleled powerful formation. According to the ancient cauldron inscriptions, once this Four Divinities Blood Formation was formed, its power was enough to destroy heaven and earth. Ghost King was a man of great talent and bold vision. Naturally, he would not turn a blind eye to this kind of powerful force. And in the Qin Yun battle 10 years ago, Qin Yun's sect Zhu Xian sword formation's prowess shook the world. It was invincible. It was not something a human could withstand. Ghost King carefully pondered. Only this Four Divinities Blood Formation had the possibility of defeating the Zhu Xian sword formation. From then on, all of Ghost King's sect's actions started to revolve around the Four Divinities Blood Formation. Yuji looked away from Mr. Ghost's indistinct figure, looked at the two spiritual beasts in the blood pool. Although surrounded by the blood water, the yellow bird that had lived for who knows how many years was clearly unwilling to give up. From time to time it made an angry, clear cry. Both of its wings flapped, immediately causing huge waves in the surrounding blood water. Just that the blood water in the blood pool seemed to have a strange restraining effect on it. The yellow bird's spiritual power was clearly far from what it used to be, especially above its head. There was a dark red light from the Hidden Dragon Cauldron enveloping it. Once the yellow bird moved, this dark red light immediately brightened. The yellow bird that was enveloped by it immediately like being pressed down by Mount Tai. Its body that had just lifted up immediately like being pressed down by an unparalleled gravity. After a few rounds, the yellow bird's movements also gradually slowed down. Although it was still resisting, but it was becoming more and more powerless. And at the other end of the blood pool, the one-legged gigantic body strange beast Kuei was immersed in the blood pool, motionless. Only its eyes occasionally glanced at the yellow bird. Not knowing if it was because it had been trapped here for too long, it had completely given up resisting. Looking at these two originally arrogant spiritual beasts actually ended up like this. Yuji couldn't help but frown slightly under the black veil, an inexplicable revulsion in her heart. Ghost King, who was standing beside her, seemed to sense something, looked at her, and suddenly said, "What are you thinking about?" Yuji was surprised and then calmed down, faintly said, "Nothing, sect head." Ghost King looked at her, and then shifted his eyes to the blood pool. After a long while, he slowly said, "Now that the four divinities' blood formation is already half completed, as long as we find the other two spiritual beasts as bait, the day our Ghost King's sect dominates the world is just around the corner." Yuji was silent for a moment, softly said, "Yes." Ghost King clasped his hands behind his back. His eyes still did not leave the two spiritual beasts in the blood pool. He suddenly changed the topic and said, "You reached the Death Marsh earlier than me. I instructed you to secretly observe ghostly. Do you have anything to say to me?" Yuji's black veil moved slightly. After a moment, she said, "In the Death Marsh, he led his men to contend with Wandu clan, Hehuan's sect, and the Good faction. In that complicated and secretive murder situation, he was still able to advance and retreat, and finally joined hand with others to exterminate Changshan Hall. He really has the talent of a great general." And, speaking till here, she suddenly paused. Ghost King was slightly surprised and said, "How?" Yuji hesitated for a moment and said, "In the Inner Marsh, he suddenly sneaked an attack and severely injured Wandu clan's Qinwen. His mind is persevering and ruthless, cannot be underestimated." While speaking, Yuji suddenly felt absent-minded. This person that she was talking about, was he really that Zhang Xiao fan? That person that Bai Yao truly loved, was really him? Ghost King instead seemed to be satisfied, nodded and said, "This child's character is persevering and resolute, indeed a rare talent. These few years he had been practicing our holy sect skills, and also has the world's unparalleled evil weapon with him day and night. His character is a little violent and bloodthirsty. It is also considered normal." Yuji raised her head and looked at Ghost King. There was a faint smile at the corner of his mouth, but contrasted with his dignified face, it revealed a chill. "But," Ghost King suddenly said, "I heard that Ghostly in the Death Marsh, when he met those good faction people, especially when he met a Qingyan disciple called Ainin, his condition was a little strange. Is there such a thing?" Chapter 209. Yuji's body shook, but she saw Ghost King's indifferent face, unable to tell what he was thinking, just that her heart, for some reason, was in a mess. She and Qing Long secretly sneaked into the Death Marsh. Ghost Li and Lu Sueki had some subtle relationship. She saw most of it in the dark. Just that thinking about it now, she felt an inexplicable heartache, like a sharp needle pierced in her heart. "What is it?" Ghost King turned his head and looked at Yuji. Yuji slowly lowered her head. Because of the black veil, nobody could see her expression. The next moment, her voice, for some reason, seemed to be hoarse but still very clear and cold, answered Ghost King. "Yes, he and Qingyun sect Lu Sueki indeed have some ambiguous relationship. I saw with my own eyes outside the Celestial Emperor treasury. Facing the Blackwater mystical viper, he risked his life to save that girl's life." Ghost King did not speak again, but in the next moment, the surrounding stench of blood suddenly became 10 times, 100 times thicker. That man was still standing with his hands clasped behind, but not knowing if it was because of the red light from the bottom of the grotto. The red glow in his eyes abruptly intensified. Yuji slowly bowed to Ghost King, walked towards the back, slowly walked out of this indistinctly suffocating grotto. Just that she had just walked to that stone door, suddenly she was stunned. Qing Long quietly stood outside the stone door, indifferently looked at her. Yuji met his gaze. Both of them looked at each other like that, did not speak for a long time. After a long time, Qing Long unhurriedly walked forward, brushed past her, and walked deeper into the grotto, leaving Yuji alone, standing in a daze in the tunnel. From the beginning to the end, he did not speak a single word to Yuji. The southern border serene moon, hanging alone in the western horizon. Deep in the ancient temple, the mournful cries of the insects, a desolate and gloomy scene. Oh, a whistling sound, a flash of light. Lu Shun rode his sword and flew over, landed in this ancient temple courtyard. Both of his eyes glinted. Minute by minute he carefully scanned this ancient temple main hall. He had already ridden his sword to search the surrounding 10 miles, but to no avail, did not see a single person. After thinking, he suddenly realized that this ancient temple was instead the place that he had neglected. The night wind was cold. Even the main door of the abandoned hall had disappeared. although LV Shun had been talking to someone in the hall not long ago. However, when he looked at it now, it suddenly became gloomy, as if there was something spying on him in the darkness. His palm suddenly broke out in cold sweat. The fish-headed monster that had just died was the clan leader of the southern barbarian merman tribe. Now that he was assassinated when he was meeting with him, he really couldn't escape responsibility. He was well aware that the southern barbaric tribes and his own sect had a secret relationship in secret, and he was even more aware of the terror and cruelty of those barbaric tribes. If he didn't give the barbaric tribes an explanation this time, then he would probably have to suffer. But based on his understanding of the southern barbaric tribes, the battle prowess of these merfolk was not to be underestimated. Even though they were still inferior to a cultivator with profound cultivation like himself, but to want to kill them in one move, this sniper's Dao skill was probably not inferior to himself. Lu Shun took a deep breath and suddenly said in a loud voice, "Which master is it? Please come out and talk." Talk, talk. The night wind carried the end of his words, gently drifted in the ancient temple. Just that the hall was still silent, no sound at all. Lu Shun's face darkened, clenched his teeth. The celestial sword in his hand glowed brightly. He became one with the sword and charged into the hall. The next moment, the hall brightened up. But at the same time, when his figure just entered the hall, at the side of the broken walls, two black figures swiftly left the hall and entered the dark shadows at the side, without a sound. After a long while, Lu Shun could be heard rummaging around in the hall. After a long while, he still walked out dejectedly, evidently to no avail. He stood on the steps, his expression uncertain. After a long time, he stomped his feet and sighed. Forget it, forget it. Speaking, he kept shaking his head and then rode his sword up, headed towards the south and disappeared without a trace in a short while. The ancient temple immediately quietened down. The cries of the insects that had disappeared due to Lu Shun's fright sounded again. The cold moon and cool breeze, it was another desolate scene. Just that after Lu Shun disappeared for a long time, this ancient temple seemed to have lost its vitality. There was still no movement. After a while, suddenly a sharp whistle was heard in the air. The red sword light suddenly charged down from the clouds, swiftly landed in the courtyard of the ancient temple, swayed a few times, and revealed Lu Shun's figure. His return this time was actually an empty city stratagem, pretending to flee far away but turn back from afar, hiding in the dark clouds in the sky. Unfortunately, even so, there was still no one in the ancient temple. Lu Shun finally revealed a dispirited expression, gave a long sigh. After a moment of silence, he again rode his sword up and flew towards the south. After that, there was no trace of him again. Seemed like this time he really left. In the ancient temple, peace was once again restored, but the next moment, two black figures swayed and slowly appeared. The person in front slowly walked into the courtyard. The moonlight, like water, coldly spilled down, casting his figure on the dilapidated bluestone courtyard, drawing out a slender shadow. It was ghostly, looking up, gazing at the moon. The moonlight was clear and cold, shining on his face. Suddenly, he looked as if he had experienced the vicissitudes of life. Even the monkey Xiao Hui, who was crouching on his shoulder, seemed to be silent, like its master, quietly looking up at the moon. Why does Gongzi like this southern border moonlight? Suddenly, the graceful figure behind him, who was still hidden in the shadows, let out a sweet and gentle voice that entered his ears. Ghostly slowly looked away but did not turn back, also did not answer the lady's question. Instead asked, "Why did you kill that human fish?" That lady who was still hidden in the shadows made a light laugh and said, "Those human fish not only harmed Gongzi's subordinates, they also harmed my subordinates. I did it for Gongzi's sake." Ghost Li's expression did not change at all. Clearly he did not believe those words, indifferently said, "I have long heard that purple light blade is a nine-heaven celestial weapon. Today, in lady's hands, it really has unfathomable power." That lady laughed lightly. Her voice was gentle and sweet in this desolate night. It suddenly seemed to add a few colors, becoming lively. Footsteps were heard. She unhurriedly walked out from the shadows. It was evil sect Hehuan's sect. known as Miao Gongzi Jinpinger. Under the moonlight, she was still dressed in a light yellow robe. The soft lapels of her robe swayed gently in the night wind. There were even a few strands of hair hanging down from her temples. It was slightly messy, but it seemed to have an indescribable allure to it. Deep in the mountains, ancient temple, cold night beauty. Right now, her eyes were like water. Between her brows there seemed to be a painting of spring, elegant and beautiful. For a moment, even this night, seemed to have turned gentle. Ghostly turned around, his eyes looked at her face. Jinpinger still had a smile on her lips, gently said, "Gongzi, you have a rare treasure. It is sinister orb and absorbing soul combined into one, my little purple light blade. How can I dare to compare with your absorbing soul?" A red glint flashed past Ghostly's eyes, but his expression did not change, said, "Lady's trip to the south this time. Is it also to investigate these human fish tribes?" Jinpinger nodded slightly, and then her eyes moved, said, "But I did not expect this matter to be related to Funxiang Valley." Ghostly glanced at her, did not speak, but in his heart he became more and more wary of this girl. Just now she suddenly attacked the human fish tribe leader. This level of skills seemed to be much higher than that day in the Death Marsh, when she attacked Changshan Hao Yangzi with him and Qin Huiyan. The three of them, most likely she did not use her full strength that day. Just that this level of skills was still secondary. He also had a backup plan that day. But Jinpinger killing the human fish people was clearly framing Funxiang Valley, instigating the secret collusion between the barbaric tribes and Funxiang Valley. This girl's scheming was deep, her methods ruthless. It was really not a small matter. Jinpinger's eyes turned a few times on Ghostly, suddenly smiled and said, "Gongzi, this trip to the south, it must be to investigate these human fish people. I wonder what you have discovered." Ghostly indifferently said, "Nothing." Jinpinger heard his cold reply, but was not angry. Instead, her smile became even more gentle, said, "Just that now we already know that Funxiang Valley seems to have secret dealings with these barbaric monsters. I wonder what Gongzi's plan is?" Ghostly's eyes glimmered, said, "What does Miss think?" Jinpinger smiled and said, "I'm the one who asked Gongzi first." Ghostly heard her retorting, frowned, innumerable thoughts already running through his mind, this time suddenly discovering that Funxiang Valley was actually secretly colluding with the southern barbaric tribes. It was really a sensational big matter. If it was spread to the world, most likely those good faction people would be dumbstruck. Under such circumstances, the best way was naturally to probe the mysterious Funxiang Valley. Just at the current situation, there seemed to be more than meets the eye, not to mention that the southern barbaric tribes had always been extremely mysterious. Just this Funxiang Valley alone, its power was not to be underestimated. The people who came out from Funxiang Valley, Li Sun, Yan Hong, and the rest, including that elder Lu Shun, their skills were all extremely high. Jinpinger slowly walked to Ghostly, raised her head and looked at him, smiled and said, "Is Gongzi thinking of probing Funxiang Valley at night?" Ghostly's eyes flashed, said, "Why? Miss also has the same intention." Jinpinger smiled, charming and moving. There seemed to be a beauty in front of him. Ghostly's mind was actually moved. His heart could not help but be shocked. Jinpinger indifferently said, "I am naturally willing to make this trip with Gongzi, just that there is one thing. I hope Gongzi will agree to it." Ghostly's gaze froze, said, "What?" Jinpinger smiled and said, "I only hope Gongzi will not be like how you dealt with Qin Wen. Suddenly kill me from the side." Chapter 210. The southern border mountain peaks were completely different from the Central Plains mountains, less elegant and serene, more lofty and precipitous. Under the night sky, undulating mountain ranges towered majestically, crisscrossing each other. Looking from afar, it exuded an austere air. Ghostly clasped his hands behind his back, gazed into the distance, separated by two lower mountain tops, behind a rather flat wilderness, for lofty peaks suddenly rose from the ground, linked together, encircling a valley. Behind these four lofty peaks, under the vast night sky, were innumerable shadows. It was the southern border, boundless 10,000 great mountains. And at the forefront of the four peaks was the world-renowned Funxiang Valley. This night, the night was deep, the serene moon hanging high, a few stars glimmering indistinctly in the horizon. Under that cold, clear moonlight, there seemed to be a faint mist in the distant valley, faintly drifting like a fine veil of mist. In the serene beauty carried some mysteriousness. Ghostly frowned, looked away. It was already the third day, ever since that night 3 days ago. He, an evil sect Tihuan, sect Jean Pinger, suddenly discovered that Funxiang Valley seemed to be secretly colluding with the southern barbarian tribes in the southern border 10,000 Great Mountains and decided to secretly investigate Funxiang Valley. Funxiang Valley, these 3 words in the southern border, naturally pierced the ears like thunder. Both of them easily found out where Funxiang Valley was. But when they really wanted to sneak in, they discovered that things were rather troublesome. Funxiang Valley occupied a vast area. Logically, it should not be difficult to sneak in. And it was indeed so. Both of them, with their own skills, easily avoided the Funxiang Valley ordinary disciples who were on guard day and night, but who knew that every time they reached a relatively deep part of Funxiang Valley, no matter how they hid themselves, an inexplicable clear bell sound would be heard nearby, immediately attracting numerous Funxiang Valley disciples to search carefully. Among them were not ordinary experts. Ghostly and Jean Pinger were alert people. A few times they were early and retreated in time, but no matter how careful they were, they still could not avoid this inexplicable bell sound. After a few days, they were still unable to penetrate deep. Funxiang Valley instead seemed to be on alert and had already sent more people to patrol day and night. Ghostly pondered for a long while, but still could not figure out how Funxiang Valley managed to predict their whereabouts. Seemed like this Funxiang Valley, one of the 3 great sects of the good faction, was indeed a place of crouching tigers and hidden dragons. At this moment, Xiao Hui, who had been quietly lying on his shoulder, suddenly moved. A low voice was heard from behind. Ah! Ghostly turned and saw, in a small open space in the forest, a fire was lit. Jean Pinger sat in front, holding a wooden stick in her hand. On the stick was a freshly washed wild rabbit being roasted. At this moment, she furrowed her brows and looked at the wooden stick in her hand, looking rather dejected. Ghostly walked over. These 3 days, he and Jean Pinger had tried several times to sneak into Funxiang Valley, but all ended in failure, and their relationship was rather subtle. On the surface, they appeared to be at peace, but secretly they were on guard against each other. Both knew that the other party was a scheming and ruthless person. Nobody knew if the other party would suddenly make a killing move. Walking nearer to the bonfire, Xiao Hui on his shoulder called out, jumped down to the ground. Ghostly looked at Jean Pinger, couldn't help but was stunned. She looked helplessly at the wild rabbit skewered on the wooden stick in her hand. One of the rabbit's legs was actually burnt. Both of them had been wandering around Funxiang Valley for a few days in this kind of wilderness. Naturally, there were no villages or inns around. After a few days of eating rations, Ghostly was fine, but Jean Pinger could not take it anymore. That night, she happened to see a wild rabbit running past and conveniently caught it, making a fire to have a change of taste. Anyway, their location was quite far from Funxiang Valley, and they were not afraid of being discovered. Just that looking at it now, although Jean Pinger's skills were high, but she had never had this kind of wild barbecue experience. After a few times, she did not master her technique properly and actually roasted the food until it was burnt black. This time, Ghostly stood in front. Xiao Hui half crouched on the ground, 1 human and 1 monkey, for eyes all landed on that burnt rabbit's leg. Jean Pinger's face actually turned red, slowly retracted the wooden stick, and left the fire. Suddenly a strange sound. It was the monkey Xiao Hui laughing loudly, crouching on the ground. Its tail stood up high, swaying to and fro, its right hand clenched into a fist, continuously hammering the ground. As if it could not bear it, it actually made an unimaginable action. Jean Pinger and Ghostly were stunned at the same time. After a moment, both recovered. Jean Pinger was shocked, and a trace of anger flashed past her face. Ghostly, too, did not know where did this monkey learn to ridicule others without rhyme or reason. Even though it was rare for it to leave him, Ghostly did not know from where did this monkey learn this skill of ridiculing others. He glanced at Jean Pinger, coughed once, his left leg kicked lightly. kicking the monkey who was still hammering the ground incessantly. Xiao Hui rolled away like a gourd, but the sounds were still heard from afar. Ghostly and Jean Pinger looked at each other. The atmosphere became awkward. Ghostly looked at the wooden stick in Jean Pinger's hand and then moved a rock over, sat on it, said to Jean Pinger, "Give it to me." Jean Pinger was surprised. Ghostly's face was indifferent, stretched his hand to take the stick, first tore off the burnt part, and then placed it back on the fire, slowly turning it over to roast. His way of barbecuing was naturally very different from Jean Pinger. The flames swallowed and spat out. The wooden stick gently turned. After a short while, a faint fragrance gradually spread out. Jean Pinger looked up and glanced at him, saw that under the light his usually pale face had turned rosy. In his deep black eyes, 2 balls of small burning flames were reflected in his eyes. A man who was concentrating on barbecuing for her. In the air, it suddenly became silent. No one spoke. Jean Pinger slowly looked away, picked up a few dried branches, and placed it into the fire. The fire gradually burned up, drowning the branches. From time to time, sounds of the branches exploding were heard. In the distant treetops, there seemed to be a night breeze blowing past. The rustling sounds of branches and leaves landed on one's heart. Xiao Hui had run back again. A few wild fruits in its hands. Seemed like it had just run into the forest to pluck them. It walked to the fire, looked around, sat down beside Ghostly's feet, brought the fruits to its mouth, opened its mouth and started to chew. At the same time, its long tail swayed and finally gently wrapped around Ghostly's leg. And like that, after a long time in silence, the fragrance in the air became thicker. That wild rabbit on top of the fire gradually oozed out oil, slowly dripping down, looking glossy. With one look it made one's appetite rise. Jean Pinger could not help but take a few more glances. After a while, Ghostly carefully assessed the rabbit, kept the wooden stick with one hand holding it, the other stretched to his waist. After a while, he took out a few small bottles and cans, sprinkled something that looked like powder on the rabbit's body. Jean Pinger was surprised, said, "What is this?" Ghostly smiled. Jean Pinger looked at him, for some reason felt that he had some bitterness. Ghostly indifferently said, "Just some salt and seasoning. It's an old habit. Always bring it with me, wherever I go." After speaking, he passed the wooden stick to Jean Pinger. Jean Pinger hesitated for a moment, but did not take it. Ghostly's eyes flashed, smiled indifferently, tore a piece of rabbit meat, and put it into his mouth. Jean Pinger blushed in the fire. A coquettish look flashed in her eyes, captivating one's soul. After a while, she stretched out her hand to take the stick, quietly said, "Many thanks, Gongzi." Ghostly did not speak, turned his head, and conveniently took a wild fruit from Xiao Hui, put it to his mouth, slowly took a bite, and started to eat. Yeah. Suddenly, Jean Pinger gave a soft cry, seemed to carry a little pain. Ghostly and the monkey Xiao Hui looked up at her at the same time, saw Jean Pinger's fair hand covering her mouth, her eyebrows slightly frowning, indistinctly showing pain. Just as she suddenly realized Ghostly and Xiao Hui were looking over, her face blushed, and after a long while embarrassedly said, "I was not careful and was scalded." Towards the end, her voice gradually became softer. Ghostly heard it. The corner of his mouth twitched, but his expression did not change. Just that Xiao Hui beside his feet suddenly made a sound. In the sounds, it grinned. The wild fruit in its right hand dropped to the ground, and then it clenched its fist and hammered the ground. Seemed like it wanted to do that strange posture again. Jean Pinger's eyes froze. Her heart was ashamed and angry, but before she could react, before Xiao Hui's hand hammered the ground, Ghostly had already lightly kicked. Xiao Hui, like a rolling gourd, was kicked out. After a while, Ghostly indifferently said, "The beast is not sensible. Don't take it to heart." Jean Pinger glanced at him, composed herself, nodded with a smile, and then gently blew at the roasted rabbit beside her, and then used her white shallot-like fingers to tear a small piece of meat from it, put it into her mouth, and started chewing. Once it entered her mouth, Jean Pinger immediately perked up, instantly felt that the fragrance seemed to have spirituality, spread throughout her body. Her body seemed to become lighter. Her mouth was full of saliva. This taste was something she had never tasted before. The skin on the outside was crispy but not burnt, thin but fragrant. The meat inside was smooth and tender, with the addition of the seasoning that she did not know how. The delicacy seemed to seep into her heart and spleen. This taste made her unable to stop, almost lost in thought. She never would have thought that this delicacy was made by this man in front of her. Even with Jean Pinger's profound skills and strong will, right now her appetite was also whetted. She tore piece after piece in a short while she had already eaten a rabbit leg. Only then did she feel somewhat full and stopped. Following which she smiled and looked at Ghostly, said, "Gong's skills are really good. An ordinary rabbit can actually be roasted to such a delicacy by you." At this time, the monkey Xiao Hui had already ran back, crouched beside Ghostly, a pair of extremely agile monkey eyes darting around, for a moment looking at Ghostly, for a moment looking at Jean Pinger. Ghostly indifferently said, "Insignificant skill. I have let Miss see a joke." Jean Pinger smiled sweetly, her countenance charming, her eyes watery, gently said, "In my entire life, I have never eaten such a delicious rabbit." Chapter 211. Ghostly smiled faintly, was about to say something, but his body suddenly shook, a perplexed look in his eyes. This sentence, this voice, this smile suddenly surged in his mind. The night was dim, the night wind cold. His heart suddenly felt pain, like a raging sea wave rolling. Once upon a time, he had actually heard these words before. Those were the dust-laden memories from many years ago, but inadvertently gushed up in his mind. A clear brook, the glimmering light, the smile, the gentle sound of the wind, Kongsing Mountain, behind the cliff, the two who had just escaped death, surrounded the fire, also barbecuing. That smiling, water-green attired figure suddenly drowned him, occupied all the space in his heart. He could not help but tremble. "Bayao, very delicious. The most delicious thing I have ever eaten in my life is this rabbit that you are barbecuing now." That sentence, faintly reverberated in his mind, slowly became a thorn, became a needle, piercing into his heart. "Gongzi, Gongzi?" A slightly surprised voice rang beside his ear, pulled Ghostly back to reality. Jean Pinger had stood up, her left hand still holding that wooden stick, but her right hand, for some reason, had shrunk into her sleeve. Ghostly's gaze froze, took a deep breath, calmed his mind, and immediately said, "I am fine." Jean Pinger looked deeply at him. The expression in her eyes fluctuated, softly said, "Gongzi, why is your face so pale? What's the matter?" Ghostly looked straight at her eyes, suddenly smiled and said, "What can happen to me?" Jean Pinger looked at him. The indistinct glint in her eyes slowly receded. Her charming countenance surfaced again, smiled and said, "It's good that Gongzi is fine." Ghostly suddenly felt a wave of vexation, but did not show it on his face. He was about to say something when Xiao Hui, who had been quiet all along, suddenly moved and looked back. Ghostly and Jean Pinger seemed to sense something at the same time, stood up and looked towards the south, in the southern horizon, above the tranquil Funxiang Valley, surrounded by mountains. Suddenly a sharp whistle was heard. A red light shot up to the sky. After illuminating the horizon, it slowly descended. Ghostly and Jean Pinger's eyes brightened at the same time. In Funxiang Valley, the lights which were extinguished because of the deep night, one by one lit up. The voices of men, near and far, mingled with the low, angry curses of those who had been disturbed in their sleep, gradually rose. But in this gradually growing hubbub, angry shouts mixed with strange beast-like roars, from the entrance of Funxiang Valley, traveled in. A moment later, the sounds of fighting could be heard. At the same time, the crisp sound of a bell and the sound of an alarm reverberated above the valley. In the middle of the night, there was actually an external enemy attacking Funxiang Valley. Arriving without a sound, Ghostly and Jean Pinger, who were hiding on another hill, looked at the lights at the entrance of Funxiang Valley, and the figures rushing out from Funxiang Valley from time to time were secretly shocked. Who exactly was it dared to so brazenly offend one of the world's good faction leaders, Funxiang Valley? Even the two of them, who were the new generation's most outstanding experts, facing the hidden dragons and crouching tigers in Funxiang Valley, they could only consider if they could sneak in. Originally, when they had just arrived, Jean Pinger could not help but softly ask, "Don't tell me it is your Ghost King sect?" Ghostly naturally denied it, But no matter how he thought about it, he really could not think of any other power in the world other than the evil faction. Which other power would be so arrogant and daring? In the night, the hubbub in Funxiang Valley. After a while, there were still figures rushing towards the valley entrance. Looking at the situation not only did not calm down, instead it seemed to be worsening. Ghostly and Jean Pinger frowned slightly, but this was after all a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Ghostly softly spoke to Jean Pinger beside him. "Let's go in." Jean Pinger nodded her head, but she glanced at Ghostly and said, "I am very interested in the situation at the valley entrance. Why don't we take advantage of the chaos to take a look?" Ghostly pondered for a moment, shook his head and said, "You go ahead. I will go deeper into Funxiang Valley to take a look." Jean Pinger seemed stunned in the darkness and then said, "All right, then you be careful." Ghostly was slightly surprised for Jean Pinger to suddenly say, "Be careful." It seemed strange, but Jean Pinger met his gaze, smiled sweetly. Suddenly her figure turned into a faint light, quietly slid down the mountain ridge. The next moment she disappeared into the darkness. Ghostly frowned, a glint flashed past his eyes. Funxiang Valley's history until now. Although it could not be compared to Qing Yun's sect and the evil faction, but it had already been operating for more than 800 years. Ghostly quietly snuck in the shadows of the night. What greeted him were buildings with picturesque disorder of palaces and pavilions. Looking at the architectural style, it was rather similar to the Central Plains, but in the minute details, like the window lintel and eaves, there were some ferocious beast carvings, which the Central Plains did not have. Clearly in these 800 years, Funxiang Valley had also been influenced by the southern border's local rough customs. At the valley entrance, it was still bustling. The kind of alarm that gave Ghostly and Jean Pinger the most headache was also ringing incessantly. The place where he was carefully hiding was at the foot of the mountain, in the shadow behind a large rock. The last time he sneaked in, it was also from here, a few more steps forward. Immediately that inexplicable clear ringing sounded. Right now he could hear the ringing from afar. 3 zhongs in front of the large rock was an empty space. And then there was an ordinary-looking house. It looked like the residence of Funxiang Valley disciple. Ghostly inhaled a deep breath, straightened his body in the shadows, looked around. The surroundings were quiet. Compared to the noises far away, it was even quieter. As for the Funxiang Valley disciple in that house, seemed to have been summoned to the valley entrance. In this strange silence, Ghostly unhurriedly walked forward. 1 step, 2 steps, he walked very slowly. Until he had taken 5 steps, the surroundings were still as usual. But the expression on Ghostly's face was even more solemn, because the last time he was here, it was when he took the 6th step, he was discovered by that strange ringing. The glint in his eyes gradually brightened. He slowly swept his gaze around, but saw that there was still no change. The next moment, he slowly took the 6th step. Ding-ling! Almost at the same time his foot touched the ground, a clear ringing suddenly rang ahead. In the silence, it spread far and wide. Ghostly's body stiffened, his heart filled with shock and anger. This Funxiang Valley's ghost skills were so powerful, but he could not discover it. It was really strange. But tonight's situation was naturally different from the past few days. Although Ghostly had triggered some invisible mechanism and sounded the alarm, but the noises and fighting noises were even more intense. In a short while, the ringing drowned out the ringing. Ghostly made a prompt decision, swept his gaze around, and then flew up, sticking close to the ground, and skimmed to the back of the house in front. Just that the ringing was still ringing nonstop. It was really a headache. And at this moment, the monkey Xiao Hui, who had been quietly crouching on Ghostly's shoulder, suddenly called out. Ghostly was startled, turned his head and glanced at Xiao Hui on his shoulder. Reflecting the faint moonlight in the night, in front of Ghostly who was in the shadows, Xiao Hui's body suddenly emitted a slight ka-ka sound, and then that gray scar on its forehead, its color seemed to darken. Before Ghostly could react, Xiao Hui, who seemed to feel something was wrong, suddenly turned its head. A pair of monkey eyes suddenly lit up with a strange, threatening golden light, but behind that patch of golden, indistinctly a trace of strange red. Gigi, Gigi. Xiao Hui's monkey hand suddenly pointed to the foundation at a remote corner of the house. Ghostly carried Xiao Hui down, carefully assessed it, quietly said, "What is it, Xiao Hui?" Gigi, Gigi. Xiaohui called out softly, its hands still pointing at that direction. At the same time, the golden light in its eyes slowly dimmed. Ghostly frowned and then nodded, placed it on his shoulder. His body immediately drifted over. The dark corner of the foundation faintly emitted the smell of moss. Under Ghost Lee's careful search, very soon he found a small hole about 1 chi in size, hidden in the foundation. A glint flashed in his eyes, stretched out his hand. Suddenly, as fast as lightning, a low cry was heard from the hole, and then immediately quietened down. Almost at the same time, the incessant ringing of the bell also suddenly stopped. A trace of smile appeared on Ghostly's lips. He unhurriedly pulled his hand out. The next moment, in his hand, there was a strange wild beast, struggled for a while, and then stopped moving. This strange beast was covered in gray skin, about 3 chi long. Its body was in a strange bow shape, its back towering high, head and tail drooping low, a pair of small black bean-like eyes embedded in its head. But the strangest thing was that this beast had an unusually long nose. It was about half a foot long, almost a third of its body length. There were 2 thick nostrils at the front of its nose, making it look like a pig raised in a farmer's house. Ghostly was stunned for a moment and then snorted, softly muttered, "No wonder I said we can't hide no matter what. There is actually this gray dolphin, Note 1 here." Note 1. Divine and Evil GE, Spiritual Beasts Chapter Gray Dolphin. Long nose, big ears, necklace long tail, eats ants, insects and grass roots, nocturnal, also known as aardvark. Also note, modern animals, aardvark. Mammal, also known as African anteater, strong body, about 140 centimeters long, without incisors and canines, like anteater, uses its long tongue to eat termites. Lives in southern and central Africa, appearing in hilly or semi-grassland areas. Very good at digging, rests in caves during the day, and comes out at night to forage for food. Very timid, exceptionally sensitive hearing, relies on smell to find food. Its sense of smell is more than 10 times that of a dog. Chapter 212. Ghostly threw the already dead gray pig at the corner of the wall and carefully examined the hole where the gray pig was at. As expected, he discovered an extremely thin string leading out from the hole, connected to a bell far away. Most likely in the past few days, his and Jean Pinger's repeated failed attempts were all discovered by this small gray pig. He had once read about it in the Ghost King's Sect's secret manual, Strange Divine and Evil Tales. The gray pig's nose was extremely sensitive, far better than any ordinary creature in the world. These few days he had been thinking of ways to conceal himself, but he did not expect to be discovered by this small beast. Just that although he understood this point, but Ghost Lee's brows still frowned, stood in the dark corner of the wall, and pondered for a moment. Gray pig, this kind of strange beast. Although it was not considered an ancient celestial beast, but it was rare in the world. It was only heard that it only existed in a certain forest deep in the southern border, 10,000 Great Mountains. Funxiang Valley actually had this beast. In these few days, when he tried to enter Funxiang Valley from various places, but was discovered without exception, the number of gray pigs in Funxiang Valley was not little. It was really shocking. But the most crucial point was, to tame so many gray pigs at the same time to such a degree, this kind of beast-taming skill, not to mention the Central Plains Good faction, even the evil sect had never heard of it before. Instead, in the legends, it was said that among the southern border barbarian tribes, there was this kind of skill. Ghostly raised his eyes and turned around, looked ahead, and suddenly discovered, in a hubbub far away, Funxiang Valley was still a stretch of tranquility, the heavy darkness like a black curtain, shrouding above. Not knowing how many secrets were hidden, the hubbub at the valley entrance gradually quieted down. Only loud voices could be heard from afar, but the sounds of fighting had completely disappeared. Seemed like Funxiang Valley was already gradually controlling the situation. Who exactly was it? Dared to openly provoke Funxiang Valley. Ghostly withdrew his gaze from the valley entrance. Jean Pinger's figure unconsciously flashed past his mind. This mysterious seductive lady most likely was still in that chaos. Right now, Ghostly had already entered deep into Funxiang Valley from that hidden corner. Along the way, there were no more alarm sounds triggered by the gray pig. Most likely Funxiang Valley distributed these sensitive little bees to the various corners of the valley. Once they reached the middle of the valley, they would not have to worry about these. In the deep night, the valley, which had just calmed down from the hubbub, seemed especially serene. Following Ghostly's ghost-like figure drifting along the paths of the pavilions in the valley, the world under the black curtain also gradually revealed. Funxiang Valley was known as the world's good faction pillar, although they usually kept a low profile, but it was after 800 years of prosperity. In the night, several paths, some big and some small, connected to each other, several paths, like a person, scattered deep into Funxiang good sect or sect. On both sides of the road were either the residences of ordinary disciples or tall and majestic palaces. Mixed in between these buildings were mostly flowers and trees. There were green bamboos, winter plum blossoms, and bright and magnificent peonies and peonies. They formed groups of each other and looked at each other from afar. They blended well with the surrounding palaces and actually had their own unique flavor. Because of the hubbub, although it was late at night, but there were still Funxiang Valley disciples moving about. Ghostly had to carefully conceal himself to avoid exposing himself. But these disciples' expressions seemed to be very calm, without the shock at the beginning of the hubbub. He knew that the situation at the valley entrance had already been settled. These few Funxiang Valley disciples moving about naturally did not pose a problem to Ghostly. For the past 10 years, he had Buddhism, evil, Taoism, 3-sect cultivation ways, with a strange mysterious Tian Shu as his foundation. His cultivation speed was unimaginable. Even the erudite Ghost King was astonished, puzzled after much thought. In the end, he could only attribute it to this Buddhism and Taoism dual cultivation. Maybe there was a secret enhancement. Just that Ghostly was hiding in the dark, although he did not think much of these ordinary Funxiang Valley disciples, but the several paths in front of him gave him a real headache, not knowing where to go. This time he sneaked into Funxiang Valley, with his own selfish intention, was to find out what secrets this Funxiang Valley actually had. It would be best if he could find out the relationship with those southern barbaric tribes. To know these, naturally he needed to head to the places where those important figures were in Funxiang Valley, just that these paths looked like a maze, really giving him a headache. Just when Ghostly was frowning in deep thought, considering if he should capture a Funxiang Valley disciple to interrogate, suddenly there was a movement on his shoulder. Xiao Hui's soft moaning was heard. Ghostly was shocked, turned his head to look. His body couldn't help but trembled. The monkey Xiao Hui was grabbing tightly onto his clothes. The monkey's face contorted, both eyes tightly closed, seemed to be in pain, just that it was after all intelligent and had human nature, knew that now was not the time, and so endured it. Ghostly's shock was no small matter. For some reason, ever since they entered the valley, Xiao Hui seemed to feel something was wrong. Looking at it now, its body seemed to be in some kind of great pain. Stretching out his hand, he gently carried Xiao Hui down. Ghostly carefully assessed it, felt the monkey's body trembling in his hands. Obviously, it was using all its strength to resist that unknown pain. Ghostly was even more worried, quietly said, "What is it, Xiao Hui?" As if it had heard its master's words, Xiao Hui's head tilted, slowly opened its eyes. Golden with a faint dark red glow, like the demonic ghost fire in the night, even more like the strange demonic eye from the Nine Nether, appeared before Ghostly. The surrounding temperature seemed to have suddenly turned cold. Xiao Hui's breathing sounds slowly started to increase. Ghostly clearly felt the monkey's claws grabbing onto his hands. That strength was getting stronger and stronger, deeply engraved into his muscles. The monkey's mouth slowly opened and closed, but the strange golden light in its eyes was staring intently at Ghostly, not relaxing for even a moment. From within, Ghostly suddenly felt a trace of familiarity, the same bloodthirsty gaze that he had when he went crazy. In that instant, Ghostly suddenly felt his entire body turning cold, abruptly turned his head, looked at his hand, in his sleeve, without knowing since when, the sinister orb at the tip of the soul-absorbing stick emitted a faint green glow with a hint of blood. Sinister orb, this world's most ferocious and most evil thing, was actually so strange, as if it suddenly emerged from the depths of his heart. Ghostly in that instant felt a bitter taste in his mouth. He blankly turned his head and looked at Xiao Hui. Xiao Hui also seemed to have felt something and softly called out twice. Ghostly composed himself and then discovered behind the golden glow in Xiao Hui's eyes there seemed to be a trace of panic. He inhaled deeply and revealed a smile on his lips, softly said, "It's all right." Xiao Hui seemed to understand its master's words. Its eyes blinked and slowly closed, after a moment, as if that inexplicable pain was gradually subsiding. The strength in Xiao Hui's claws also gradually lessened. Ghostly stood in the darkness, slowly embraced Xiao Hui in his arms. The night was as cold as water. In the darkness ahead, a man and a monkey figures, in the dark corner of the night, gently flashed. After standing for a long time, Xiao Hui seemed to have fallen asleep, quietly crouched in Ghostly's arms. Ghostly did not even care that this was Funxiang Valley dangerous place. Standing in the darkness, gently hugged the monkey. Suddenly, Xiao Hui's body in his arms moved, its head lifted up. Ghostly looked down. The golden glow in the monkey's eyes had already disappeared. It had reverted to its usual lively look. Ghostly heaved a sigh of relief, but before he could say anything, Xiao Hui seemed to struggle for a moment and then pointed its arm toward the path outside. Ghostly was surprised, looked up, and after a while, indeed, two people walked over from that path. There were people that Ghostly recognized. Li Sun and Yan Hong. Ghostly frowned. He had known these two for 10 years. They were both outstanding talents, although in these 10 years the world had changed, and they had not met again, but for a cultivator, 10 years was just a blink of a finger. Both of their expressions and looks were almost the same as 10 years ago, just that looking at their movements, most likely their skills were also incomparable to that time. Both of them slowly walked over, seemed to be talking to each other. When they neared, Yan Hong was heard saying, "Senior brother, why did those monsters suddenly charge in?" Li Sun frowned, clearly did not understand, but looking at his cold face, he coldly said, "Those uncivilized beasts, who knows what they are thinking? If I had to say, these human fish dares to invade the valley. We should make sure they never return. Why bother Shangwan teacher uncle?" Chapter 213. Yan Hong softly said, "Senior brother, don't be angry. Valley Master has deep foresight. There must be something that we are not aware of. When we were negotiating with those barbarians, it was Shangwan teacher uncle who displayed his supernatural powers to intimidate them. Those barbarians saw him as a celestial being. As long as he appeared, those monsters would definitely leave obediently. Valley Master asked us to invite Shangwan teacher uncle out. It must be because of this." Li Sun snorted, said, "I naturally know about these, but I just don't understand. With our Funxiang Valley's prestige, why do we have to humble ourselves to those monsters? And now we still have to invite Shangwan teacher uncle out. If this matter spreads out, won't our Funxiang Valley become the world's good faction laughingstock?" Yan Hong smiled and said, "Senior brother, I think these barbarians still have some use, so Valley Master tolerated them. In the future..." Speaking till here, she suddenly stopped, but her eyes looked at Li Sun, as if she had thousands of words to say. Li Sun's lips curled, a trace of dissatisfaction on his handsome face. Looking from afar, it seemed to add a few degrees of elegance. But he did not say anything more, only sighed softly, with Yan Hong unhurriedly walked onto a small path, after a while, disappeared into the night. In the shadows, a gaze as sharp as a knife watched their backs. Ghostly's thoughts turned quickly. The ones who invaded Funxiang Valley tonight were actually those human fish tribes that he was investigating. Recalling that night 3 days ago, he overheard Lu Shun and the human fish talking. That tall human fish seemed to be the tribe leader. It seemed like tonight's matter, most likely because that human fish tribe leader was killed by Jean Pinger. The remaining human fish tribe came in anger to seek revenge. Thinking of that, Jean Pinger's figure involuntarily flashed past Ghostly's mind. His wariness towards this girl increased by another level. He stood in the shadows for a moment and then seemed to make a decision. Looked at Xiao Hui in his arms. Xiao Hui's eyes blinked. Suddenly its body moved, scurried up his shoulder, grinned, seemed to have completely recovered. Ghostly was assured, smiled faintly and said, "Let's go see what kind of person that Shangwan teacher uncle is. What do you think?" Xiao Hui called out twice, with a wave of its monkey hand. It pointed to the path that Li Sun and Yan Hong had taken. Ghostly laughed soundlessly in the darkness. His figure suddenly rose, fast like a ghost, headed towards that secluded path. In the distance, a Funxiang Valley disciple was walking over here, suddenly felt a blur in front of him. It seemed like there was a ghost figure flashing past on the path leading to the important place in the valley, Inferno Altar. When he looked carefully, he did not see anything, couldn't help but was stunned for a moment, and then shook his head, mumbled a sentence, and continued to walk forward, not taking it to heart. The path was quiet, but it was unexpectedly long. Obviously, that Shangwan teacher uncle's place was very secluded. Ghostly did not walk far on this road, and there were no other houses around. Both sides of the road were trees and flowers. The night breeze blew over, under the dim moonlight in the horizon. The shadows of the trees swayed, looked like some demons dancing, revealing a trace of strangeness. Ghostly carefully walked along this path. After walking for a while, he did not see any crossroads like outside. Seemed like this was a path that led directly to where that Shangwan teacher uncle was. Funxiang Valley occupied a huge area. This small path looked like it was winding and meandering, led deep into the valley. Suddenly, an object appeared ahead, a white square. Ghostly's eyes focused, looked at it. It was a stone tablet. On it were 2 rows of characters. Inferno Ground Disciple. Stop. Ghostly frowned, not because of the mystery of Funxiang Valley ahead which made him hesitate, but because these 2 words, Inferno Ground, quietly stirred a place in his heart. He could not help but glance his right arm. Under his clothes, Inferno Mirror was quietly lying on his arm. He was stunned for a moment and then sneered, lifted his feet, and walked past this stone tablet. That stone tablet, although looked ordinary, but it seemed to be a demarcation point. After passing the stone tablet, for some reason, although the small path was still winding and extending forward, but the trees and flowers on both sides of the path evidently became sparse. First, the green grass on the ground gradually disappeared. Then the short shrubs, and finally even the dense trees on both sides also gradually became sparse. Not to mention the ground started to crack. Even the remaining few trees, their trunks and branches also became a patch of withered yellow, as if there was an extreme lack of water nearby, and they were scorched. Not sure if it was related to those 2 words, Inferno Ground. Xiao Hui on his shoulder quietly called out. Its body also moved, seemed to be uneasy. Ghostly gently patted its body. Xiao Hui then gradually calmed down. The surrounding scene was indeed very strange, but it did not look like there was any important place in Funxiang Valley. If not along the way, he did not even see a single disciple guarding. Ghostly's thoughts turned, following the small path, turned the last bend. Suddenly, even with his composure, his body could not help but trembled. In front of him appeared a large empty space. A gust of heat wave blew over from nowhere. In the middle of the empty space was an enormous circular altar, the bottom suspended in the air, 13 enormous stone pillars made of white jade, 3 zhongs tall, supported the entire altar. At the edge of the altar, there were a total of 12 white jade stone pillars, each one as thick as 2 people's arms would need to encircle it, and in the middle of the altar, the thickest white jade stone pillar looked like it would need at least 5 or 6 people's arms to encircle it. And above the altar, all the structures were built with a kind of scarlet red strange stone. The stairs and railings were all the same. In the middle of the altar stood a tall and majestic hall, in the shape of a pagoda, a total of 3 levels. Each higher level was about half the size of the one below, but each level looked to be an unbelievable 10 zhongs high. Looking from afar, this altar was like an enormous burning scarlet red flame, piercing the firmament. Ghostly standing below this altar seemed like an ant, extremely tiny. Ghostly inhaled deeply. The structure before him was really astonishing. The 4-word superlative workmanship. Most likely it was fully deserving of its name. Unexpectedly in Funxiang Valley, there was such a magnificent structure. He pondered in his heart. After a moment he thought of that stone tablet, which he had just entered. He vaguely knew that this place most likely was the legendary Funxiang Valley's famed place, Inferno Altar. He composed himself and then quietly floated over. Other than the Inferno Altar in front of him, there was nothing else around. There was no cover at all. But luckily there were no guard around, and his movements were fast. In a blink he had reached the bottom of the Inferno Altar. Once he neared this Inferno Altar, The heat in the air immediately rose by more than a few times. Even with Ghost Lee's level of cultivation, he also felt a wave of irritation. Beads of perspiration appeared on his forehead. Ghostly frowned, was secretly shocked, and then remembered. He did not know if Xiao Hui could withstand this scorching heat. He turned his head and saw Xiao Hui on his shoulder scratching its head and ears, as if ignoring the surrounding heat. Ghostly was surprised, subconsciously felt that Xiao Hui was not normal recently, especially after swallowing the rare elixirs and stones in the Celestial Emperor treasury on that celestial tree in the Death Marsh. Its body had obviously started to gradually change. But no matter what, in this situation, Xiao Hui not being afraid of the heat was naturally much better than being afraid of it. Ghostly temporarily did not have the mood to care so much. He was pondering if his next step should be to go up this inferno altar. Suddenly footsteps were heard from above the inferno altar. Ghostly frowned, glanced around, but there was no place to hide. After pondering for a moment, he flew below the inferno altar and hid behind a thick white jade pillar. He hid behind the pillar, subconsciously stretched out his hand to touch the pillar. Suddenly his hand felt hot. With his quick reaction, he immediately pulled his hand back. Below this inferno altar, even the stone pillar was boiling hot. The footsteps became louder. Evidently someone was coming down. Suddenly an old voice was heard, unhurriedly said, "Since Valley Master has invited me, I naturally have to go, just that you all better tell me. Why did those human fish people suddenly become so violent, to the extent that they want to attack the valley?" Ghostly hid in the shadow of the pillar, looked out, saw Li Sun and Yan Hong following behind a gray-attired elder, walking down respectfully. Chapter 214. Ghostly watched from the dark, saw that Elder's face was thin, dressed in a gray robe, simple and unadorned, his mannerisms calm, did not have any outstanding features. If he was walking on the streets of an ordinary town, most likely no one would be able to tll that he was a cultivator. But looking at the expressions of the two behind him, not to mention Yan Hong, even the arrogant Li Sun seemed to be very respectful to this ordinary elder, did not dare to slight him. Right now, hearing that elder's question, Li Sun hesitated for a moment and then said, "Teacher, uncle, please understand. Actually, it is because those merfolk barbarian tribe leaders died an unnatural death. So these monsters went berserk. That's why the three of them had just walked down from the altar." The elder frowned, indifferently said, "How did the merfolk tribe leaders die?" Li Sun, with a bitter laugh, shook his head. Yan Hong said, reporting to teacher uncle, that merfolk tribe leader was 3 days ago. After meeting Lu Shun teacher uncle at Higu Mountain Nameless Ancient Temple, less than a mile away from the ancient temple, he was suddenly killed by an expert. The gray-clothed old man exclaimed in surprise and said, "Who's the culprit?" Li Sun shook his head, said, "We have been investigating for several days, still have no leads." Speaking until here, he seemed to hesitate for a moment and then continued. "Actually, this matter should have been reported to teacher uncle long ago. Just that Valley Head remembered that teacher uncle has been guarding the Inferno altar for almost 100 years and has long stopped meddling in worldly affairs, so did not wish to disturb teacher uncle." The elder smiled and said, "Valley Head's good intentions, how can I not know?" Thinking that if not for the fact that these barbarians still have some use, and I had some reputation when I subdued them, Valley Head would not wish to trouble this old man. Li Sun smiled embarrassedly and was about to say something, but the gray-clothed old man seemed unwilling to say anything more on this topic, so he changed the topic and said, "Wasn't Lu Shun also present at that time? Less than a li away? Could it be that he also couldn't find the murderer? Even if he dug 3 chi into the ground, he would have found it long ago." Li Sun heard it and looked at Yan Hong. Yan Hong hesitated for a moment, softly said, "It has always been that the murderer is too cunning and highly skilled. After one successful strike, he immediately escaped. That's why even Lu Shun teacher uncle could not catch him." The gray-clothed old man snorted and didn't say anything else. However, disdain could be felt from his voice and expression. Obviously, he looked down upon the martial uncle Lu Shun that Li Sun and Yan Hong spoke of. The three of them walked and talked, less than 3 zhongs of distance. They had already covered half of it, gradually getting further away from Ghostly. Ghostly slowly calmed down, but his body did not dare to relax. At this moment he heard that elderly seemed to ask a question from afar. Because he had walked too far, the voice could not be heard clearly, but indistinctly he heard that the elderly was asking about the situation of those rebellious mere-people barbarians. Li Sun behind him replied, "Now the situation has stabilized. Lu Shun teacher uncle led a group of disciples to block those monsters at the valley entrance, and with their supernatural powers, suppress the human fish people. Now both parties are facing off. Those human fish people kept saying that they want to avenge their tribe leader. Valley Master is also not willing to shed all pretenses with the southern barbarian tribes, so he sent me to invite teacher uncle." Speaking until here, suddenly, a shrill cry was heard from the valley entrance, reverberated far away, the sound extremely mournful. Everyone present was shocked. Li Sun exclaimed, "It seems to be the entrance." Before they could react, the next moment the sounds of fighting and killing were heard again. Angry shouts and shrill cries were heard incessantly. The valley, which had just quietened down, was once again shrouded by the sounds of fighting. The three people's faces changed greatly. The gray-robed old man snorted and waved his sleeve. He immediately turned into a gray light and soared into the sky. He flew swiftly towards the entrance of the valley. Li Sun and Yan Hong also hurriedly followed, until their figures completely disappeared in the night. Ghostly then slowly walked out from the Inferno altar, pondered for a moment, turned around, and looked towards the Inferno altar. The huge building before him towered majestically. Even a white jade pillar beside it looked so majestic in the night, not to mention the scarlet-red palaces and pavilions above it. Not far ahead was the stairs of the elder Li Sun and Yan Hong walked down from. Ghostly walked towards the stairs, saw that all the stairs were built with the same strange scarlet-red stone, blended in with the surrounding stone railings. Slowly stepping on it, Ghostly walked up. Right now the surrounding temperature seemed to have risen a lot, as if what he was stepping on was not that kind of scarlet-red stone, but a real burning flame. This Inferno altar stairs went up 36 steps, turned, and continued to extend upwards. Ghostly breathed deeply, his face cold, slowly walked up. The surrounding railings and stone walls were plain and unadorned, without any carvings, looking especially simple and unadorned. Right now, even the wind blowing from the night sky also became extremely hot. Xiao Hui crouched on Ghostly's shoulder, its eyeballs rolling around, curiously looking around. Finally, after walking up the stairs, a total of 3 levels and 108 steps, Ghostly came to the Inferno altar. Even though he had already seen the scene from far below the Inferno altar, but now that he was on the Inferno altar, standing in front of the towering palace in the middle of the Inferno altar, looking at the enormous building that was taller than him by 100 times, looking at the sharp sword-like spires piercing the sky, Ghostly still couldn't help but feel insignificant. The same scarlet-red stone was cut into huge stones of equal size, each piece almost half a person's height, piled up to form a magnificent palace. Walking nearer, in the hot air, Ghostly clearly saw that these stones were connected so tightly, the gaps in the middle looked like even a blade would not be able to pierce through. He really could not imagine how the ancestors of Funxiang Valley were able to create such an uncanny craftsmanship of the palace. In fact, he almost had an illusion that what was in front of him was not a hall, but a huge burning flame. Furthermore, the flame was so huge that it seemed as if it would soon overwhelm him and devour his tiny self. Ghostly breathed deeply, composed himself, suppressed the awe in his heart, and then turned his head, carefully looked at the path to enter the Inferno altar palace. It didn't take him much effort to find it. The entire tower-like altar did not even have a window. It was completely surrounded by huge scarlet stones. Only at the lowest level, not far from him, there was a 1 zhang tall and 6 qi wide door. Ghostly walked over, very quickly discovered that although this door was painted red, but it was different from the surrounding stone walls. It was a wooden door. Come to think of it, if even the door to enter and exit was also an extremely heavy stone door, it would most likely be very troublesome. Ghostly stood in front of the door for a while, but did not immediately push it open. Instead, turned and looked behind. The entire Inferno altar, other than the hot air, it was silent. Jia! The next moment, He pushed the door open. Funxiang Valley entrance. Right now, it was already a river of blood. More than 100 tall and strong fish-headed barbarians were wailing, extremely furious, holding all kinds of strange weapons. There were spears, knives, swords, and halberds, fighting with the surrounding Funxiang Valley disciples incessantly. Blood flowed on the ground. Broken limbs could be seen everywhere among the casualties. There were quite a number of Funxiang Valley disciples, but most of them were human fish people. As for these broken limbs, most likely they were chopped off by those savage human fish people. But although the scene was terrifying, the human fish people were also incomparably ferocious, but the situation was Funxiang Valley side gradually suppressing the human fish people, and it looked like Funxiang Valley side still had some leeway. Several higher-level disciples encircled the city in a semicircle, pressing inwards together. Just that these human fish people were really ferocious, and their bodies were very different from humans. Even if a cultivator was hit by a Funxiang Valley disciple sword light, most likely he would also be injured. But these human fish people, for some reason, their bodies were extremely sturdy, and in addition, the Funxiang Valley disciples seemed to have received some orders, left some leeway, other than a few skilled swords and magical weapons when the other disciples' magical weapons hit them. The human fish people at most were sent flying. It was extremely difficult to see blood. But firstly, the Funxiang Valley disciples had been cultivating for many years. Their skills were not shallow. One-on-one plus the power of their magical weapons, they still won against these barbarian human fish people. Secondly, these human fish people were only strong and thick-skinned. The Funxiang Valley disciples advanced and retreated, from time to time, flew their swords down and attacked. Giving the human fish people a huge headache, they still had the upper hand. And among the Funxiang Valley disciples, an elderly was commanding. It was Lu Shun whom Ghostly met that day at the desolate mountain ancient temple. Right now his brows were tightly frowning, his expression extremely ugly, clearly extremely furious. The battle was at its climax. Suddenly a tragic cry was heard. It was a Funxiang Valley disciple who was careless, revealed an opening, and was hooked by a human fish person using a weapon that looked like a sickle. His leg was hooked and dragged down from the air, fell onto the ground. The next moment several human fish people swarmed over. Weapons danced wildly. In a blink he died a violent death. Even his body was not complete. Chapter 2:15. In that instant, the Funxiang Valley disciples were in an uproar. Many of them could no longer control themselves, increase the strength in their hands. The magical weapons and flying sword that filled the sky immediately whistled incessantly, attacking as a group. In short, while miserable cries were heard, several of the human fishes were already hacked to death by the magical weapons. Just that these human fishes were ferocious by nature. Seeing the scene of blood splattering, not only did they not show any fear, instead they fought even more crazily, not fearing death. Lu Shun rode his sword into the air, repeatedly shouted to stop, but whether it was the human fishes or the Funxiang Valley disciples, all of them were in a killing frenzy. No one took his words to heart, watching an even bigger massacre about to unfold. And at this moment, the night sky, which was originally filled with a lonely moon, suddenly darkened. Lu Shun frowned, glanced up, saw a ball of gray clouds sweeping over. His countenance changed, could not help but snorted. How fast was that gray cloud? In the blink of an eye, it had already flown in front of them. Moreover, its power was getting stronger and stronger. The wind in the air was spinning rapidly, gradually turning into a tornado with a diameter of several feet. Mixed with a sharp sound, it rushed down from the night sky with a woo sound. Almost at the same time, the surrounding flora and fauna were blown outwards by the strong wind. Sand and stones flew. The weaker Funxiang Valley disciples and some of the human fishes were even swept up by the strong wind and thrown out. Everyone turned pale with fright. Before they could react, that tornado had already landed on the ground. In the sharp sound of the wind, loud sounds were heard. Several human fishes, as if they were grabbed by a huge hand, were all thrown up, flew backwards, and landed heavily on the ground. Those human fishes screamed, their voices shrill and unpleasant to the ears, but it was clear that they were terrified. The violent wind continued for a while. After separating all of the human fishes and Funxiang Valley disciples, it then slowly stopped. The sound of the wind gradually subsided. The huge force of the wind also gradually dispersed. A gray-attired old man's figure appeared. The Funxiang Valley disciples were stunned, and then one after another landed on the ground, bowed to that old man, respectfully said, "Shangguan, teacher, uncle." At this moment, Lu Shun also slowly landed on the ground and walked over. Glancing at the gray-robed old man, the veins on his face twitched. Then he put on a fake smile and said, "Senior brother Shangguan, why did such a small matter disturb such a big shot like you?" The gray-robed elder glanced at him and said with a faint smile, "The Valley Master has given the order, so I have to come." Lu Shun's expression changed. At this time, Li Sun and Yan Hong had also arrived. They landed from the sky. Li Sun walked to Lu Shun's side, lowered his voice, and said softly, "Lu Shu, it was Valley Master who ordered me to invite Shangguan Shu." Lu Shun snorted, his expression even more unsightly. But in the end he did not say anything and turned his head away. The gray-robed old man didn't even look at him. He turned around and looked at the blood-soaked ground, and his face darkened. At this moment, the fishmen were all gathered together, and their gazes were on the gray-robed old man. However, at this moment, they seemed to recognize this gray-robed old man. For some reason, these fearless fishmen were somewhat fearful of this ordinary gray-robed old man, and for a moment, they didn't dare to rush forward. The gray-robed old man looked away, and a deep voice said, "Where is Sun Tu?" He had just finished speaking. A middle-aged man ran out from the Funxiang Valley disciples. It was that Sun Tu who went with Lu Shun that night and knew the brute tribe language. He ran to the gray-robed old man with an extremely respectful expression, said, "Disciple is here." The gray-robed old man glanced at him, saw that this person's face was covered in dirt. Seemed like in the battle just now, because his skills were not high, he suffered a lot. But he was lucky that he did not die. After all, there were not many who could understand the brute tribe language. He said, "Come over and repeat what they said to me." Sun Tu, carefully acknowledged, stood aside. The gray-robed old man glanced at the fishmen, loudly said, "I am Shangguan Su. Someone come out to speak." There was a stir among the fishmen. Obviously, they understood Shangguan Su's words, and this name seemed to have some kind of magical power to them. It was extraordinary. After a long while, a tall fisherman walked out. Shangguan Su assessed him, slowly said, "Do you know me?" That fisherman hesitated for a moment. G, said. Sun Tu, who was beside, immediately translated, "They know." Shangguan Su's expression did not change, said, "Why do you want to attack my valley? Don't tell me you think our Funxiang Valley has no one." That fisherman's face turned angry. G started to speak, his voice loud and furious. Sun Tu listened and said, he said, "Our tribe leader was killed when he met with your people. You all actually said you cannot find the murderer, clearly. Clearly it was you all who did it. Although our Fishman tribe is not your match, but we will still fight to the death to avenge our tribe leader." Shangguan Su frowned tightly. A trace of worry flashed past his eyes. He was one of the top figures in Funxiang Valley, his skills unfathomable. 100 years ago, in a secret fierce battle with the southern border barbarians, Shangguan Su displayed his prowess, intimidated the barbarians. From then on, his name spread among the 63 tribes of the southern border. Today, Funxiang Valley Master Yun Elon asked him, who had not been involved in worldly affairs for a long time, to appear. The reason was also because of this. Just that Shangguan Su had lived in the southern border for a long time, his understanding of these barbarians in the 10,000 Great Mountains was incomparable to others. Just this tribe of fishmen barbarians, he knew they were vicious and ferocious, and the death of their tribe leader to them was an unprecedented shame and humiliation. It was really possible that the entire tribe would die here. If it was just this one foreign tribe, Shangguan Su naturally would not take it to heart. Just that the southern border barbarian tribes, on the surface, they were fighting each other, but their internal relationships were complicated. Furthermore, in these 100 years, there was a peerless figure. It was not a small matter if that person was alarmed. Funxiang Valley's 100 years great plan would be ruined in one day. While he was thinking, Li Sun saw Shangwan so lowering his head in contemplation and quietly said to Sun Tu, "When I left just now, didn't I already control the situation? Both sides facing off, the fishmen have no intention of fight. Do you want our Valley Master to come out and speak? Why are they fighting again?" Sun Tu's face was bitter. He smiled bitterly and said, "We were also wondering. It was still all right at first, although it was a little tense, but both sides did not have the intention to continue fighting. Unexpectedly, the fishmen suddenly cried out. One of the fishmen at the edge, for some reason, was killed. As a result, the mermen's eyes turned red, and they rushed forward like crazy. Shangwansa heard it. Suddenly, in a deep voice, said, "Was it done by our people?" Sun Tu was tongue-tied for a moment. Instead, Lu Shun coldly said, "It was a mess at that time, who knows?" Shangwansa's face turned cold, suddenly raised his voice, and shouted to the Funxiang Valley disciples. During the confrontation just now, did anyone kill the fishmen? The Funxiang Valley disciples were silent. The disciples looked at each other. After a long while, no one came out to admit. Far away, there was a commotion among the fishmen, obviously furious. Shangwansa frowned tightly, suddenly spoke to the fishmen standing in front. "I will go take a look at that person's body." After speaking, without waiting for that fishman's reply, he walked straight over. That fishman's countenance changed, but looking at Shangwansa's expression, he eventually still turned around, brought him to a corner of the crowd, identified, and then pointed to a fishman's body. GG, a few words. At this time, Lu Shun, Li Sun, Sun Tu, etc. also followed behind Shangwansu and walked over. Sun Tu quietly said, "The one who died is this fishman." Shangwansu stood beside the body, looked carefully. His expression gradually turned ugly. After a moment, he quietly muttered to himself, "Formidable, formidable." Li Sun stood behind him and also looked at the corpse. He couldn't help but frown. The fisherman corpse still held a large knife in his hand, but the head on his neck was gone. Not far away, there was a fisherman's head. It seemed to be his. This fisherman was actually cleanly beheaded with one knife. Li Sun's gaze unexpectedly landed on that neck. The wound was extremely smooth. Evidently, it was killed by an extremely sharp weapon. "Eh!" Suddenly, Lu Shun quietly exclaimed, walked over and squatted down to take a closer look at the fisherman's body. Shangwansa frowned and said, "What is it?" Lu Shun looked for a long while, slowly stood up, but his expression was already extremely ugly. In a deep voice said, "This wound is the same as the one the murderer left behind when he killed the Fishman tribe leader. The wound is smooth, the muscles not twisted at all, but deep inside the blood vessels, for some reason, a faint purple color." Everyone was shocked and quickly looked closely. It was as what Lu Shun said. Shangwansu was greatly shocked, abruptly turned his head, his eyes glowing. "The murderer is here." Shangwansu's gaze was like a knife, extremely sharp. The originally ordinary old man right now seemed to emit an irresistible sharpness. He slowly looked around one by one. No one dared to look him in the eye. The scene suddenly became silent. Only the night breeze that came from somewhere brushed past the branches, making rustling sounds. Chapter 216. Inferno Altar. Although it was a wooden door, but it still felt heavy. Under Ghost Li's strength, this thick and heavy door on the Inferno Altar emitted a muffled sound and slowly opened inwards. Inside the door, a faint red light shone out. The surrounding air seemed to have risen a few degrees, extremely hot. Ghostly frowned, beads of perspiration already forming on his forehead. He suddenly recalled what he heard just now, that Shangwan Elder had actually guarded this hot place for close to 100 years. He really did not know how he had been living in this place. Inside the Inferno Altar, it did not look bright, other than a trace of red light shining from somewhere. It seemed to be more of a gloomy darkness, not matching the surrounding heat. Ghostly stood at the entrance, pondered for a moment, and finally still lifted his feet and walked in. With another creaking sound, the wooden door gently closed. Ghostly inhaled deeply, calmed his mind, and started to assess the surroundings. Just like what he had guessed when he saw the altar from the outside, it was indeed an extremely large hall inside, as high as 5 zhongs. The entire hall was circular in shape. The walls were the same as what he saw outside, made of that kind of scarlet red rock, without any carvings or decorations, simple and unadorned, but in this huge space, there was an indescribable grandeur, making one feel that only this kind of simplicity was the true highest realm of architecture. Very soon, Ghostly discovered that the red light in the entire Great Hall originated from the center of the Great Hall. The nearer he got to the center of the Great Hall, the brighter the surroundings. Looking from afar, under that red light, the Great Hall seemed like a ball of scorching fire was burning. Ghostly stared at that ball of fire. The red light shone over, reflected in his eyes, and also shone on Xiao Hui, who was crouching on his shoulder. One man and one monkey's eyes seemed to be dyed red by something at the same time, indistinctly a red fire burning. Xiao Hui's tail swayed slightly, seemed to also feel uneasy, quietly called out. Ghostly strided, walked towards that ball of fire in the center of the Great Hall, unhurriedly walked towards the depths of that red light. As he got closer and closer to the flame, the surrounding air became hotter. At this moment, it was almost the same as being next to underground lava. In Ghostly's mind, for some reason, he suddenly thought of a long-forgotten past matter. Under the Fire Dragon Cave, the lava lake that was even hotter than now, that pair of fox demons who jumped into the lake to commit suicide. This thought flashed past when he was less than 1 zhong away from the center of the Great Hall. He suddenly stopped. Xiao Hui turned its head to look at its master. Ghostly frowned. His eyes had already turned away from the ball of fire, looking at the ground. A pattern suddenly appeared on the flat floor, made of crimson stones. Just below Ghostly's feet, a finger-sized cut appeared on the stone, extending to both sides, but it looked crooked and not smooth. In one chi in front of Ghostly was the same finger-sized engraving, drawn on the hard scarlet red rock, forming a 1 chi large pattern. It was a god that Ghostly had never seen before, never heard of before. The vigorous engraving slowly extended on the ground. Traces of time could be seen everywhere at the edges, showing that these patterns had existed for a long time, revealing a trace of desolation. The god's head did not have any hair, but had slightly curved horns like a goat's. The face and brows were similar to a human's, just that under that pair of eerie and empty eye sockets. The mouth was clearly filled with sharp fangs. The carver even carved a few tiny holes beside the fangs, as if fresh blood was dripping out, adding a few degrees of ferocity and savagery. The body of this god was very different from that of a human. It was as strong as a tiger or a leopard, and it had 4 arms. One of its hands held a knife, and the other held a shield. One of its remaining 2 hands was tightly gripping a human body that was twisting in pain. That person seemed to be screaming at the sky. The other hand was gently holding something that was still dripping with blood. It was a human heart, the original ancient and desolate engraving. At this point, suddenly became furious and unrestrained. That strength, that deep hatred, seemed to burst out at once. Ghostly actually so vividly and inconceivably felt that wave of madness rising from this engraving. The gentle engraving suddenly became intense, flew down from the torso, merged into one in the lower body of this ferocious god, and turned into a raging flame. The red light shone. This god's mouth also seemed to have a trace of a hideous smile, as if it was about to break out of the ground and resurrect. Ghostly took a deep, deep breath. Almost subconsciously, in his mind, he combined this carver and the person who built this altar as one. He did not expect that there was such a master craftsman in this world. There was actually such a genius with such uncanny workmanship. One engraving seemed to have seized all the creation of the world. That engraving was still extending on the ground. Ghostly could not help but walk to the side, and gradually found the second statue, the third statue, and finally, after circling around the red flame in the middle, he found a total of 8 engraved images of gods on the ground. Not one was the same, but Ghostly could almost be sure that all the engravings on the ground were all ferocious gods. In these engravings, humans had completely become these gods' sacrifices like food. The entire Great Hall, right now, was in an austere atmosphere. as if following the discovery of these engravings. There was some ferocious creature growling in the unseen world. And outside these images, there was another engraving enveloping all of them, but it was not a complete circle. Sometimes it curved inwards, sometimes it surged outwards. For the moment, Ghostly could not understand. Right now, he had returned to the first image of the ferocious god. After taking a deep look at this ferocious god, he raised his head. That burning flame again appeared in front of him. Suddenly, a sound in his mind, something seemed to surge up. A thirst for blood, so familiar, welled up in his heart. Almost at the same time, the surrounding ferocious god engravings suddenly seemed to come alive, indistinctly swaying in front of him. The soul-absorbing stick hidden beside his hand, through his robe sleeves, slowly started to light up. Ghostly's breathing slowly turned heavy. Suddenly, he shook his head heavily, forced himself to calm down, and then slowly walked towards that ball of flame in the middle. Just that, he had forgotten to look at the monkey Xiao Hui on his shoulder. In that pair of monkey eyes, the golden light appeared again, but behind the golden light, there was even more red light, carrying the same crazed, bloodthirsty look in Ghostly's eyes, gradually brightened and dazzled, filling up its eyes. The distance of one zhang was not very far. Ghostly very quickly reached the source of the red light in the middle of the great hall. Right now, he had already discovered the 8 deities' stone carvings were all surrounding this source of light, and the deities' heads were all facing here. Right now, the surrounding temperature was already blazing hot. If an ordinary person was here, most likely he would not even be able to continue breathing. Ghostly forcibly suppressed the waves of bloodthirsty impulse in his heart. Through the red light, looked towards that source of light. An object that looked like Ishii, thin at the top and thick at the bottom, appeared in the middle of the great hall. High 3 chi, diameter less than 2 chi, like the stones on the ground, it was built with that kind of scarlet red rock. However, on the flat surface of the well, there was a piece of white, translucent stone that was as clear as crystal. It seemed to be round, but upon closer inspection, one would discover that there were countless facets on it. They were of different sizes, and incomparably resplendent light flowed and covered it. And the red light that shot out incessantly from the well, after passing through this crystal-like strange stone, the light was refracted layer by layer, looking as if there were traces of blood vessels flowing in it. And these light rays condensed into a ball of red light 3 chi above the strange stone. It was the burning flame that Ghostly had seen from afar, and the light source in the entire great hall was also coming from here. Looking at this mysterious and miraculous scene, Ghostly slowly approached that well, approached that seemingly transparent and resplendent strange stone, looked down. A familiar scene imprinted into his eyes. The scorching magma below roared and surged like a raging ocean tide, continuously surging up and down. The splashing magma hit the hard rock walls and made sizzling sounds. This inferno altar was actually built on top of a volcano that looked like it was about to erupt. Ghostly felt a wave of irritation, involuntarily clenched his fists. Even his breathing became heavy. Ever since he got close to those ferocious god stone carvings on the ground, it was as if these images that he had never heard of, never seen before, triggered the ruthlessness deep in his heart. Or maybe these gods were actually savage, evil gods. The bloodthirsty, murderous intent in his heart grew stronger, but the strange thing was, his consciousness was still able to maintain, totally different from his usual state where he seemed to have sunk into madness. Just that although he was clear-headed, the torment brought by the violent ruthlessness in his body was even more excruciating. If there was anyone standing nearby, they would be able to see that Ghostly's eyes right now, glowing red, almost like an evil spirit. Just when Ghostly was forcing himself to hold on, Xiao Hui on his shoulder suddenly called out twice, jumped down, and landed on that strange stone. Chapter 217. Ghostly was shocked. There was an indistinct blood-red light circulating in this strange stone. Even though he had trained in the evil sect Tian Shu for many years, he could feel that the evil power in it was not to be underestimated. He quickly stretched out his hand to block it and anxiously said, "Xiao Hui, be careful." But Xiao Hui had, after all, jumped down suddenly. Ghostly's reaction was slightly slower, and his grab missed. Xiao Hui's body was stretched out in the air. Only its eyes, like Ghost Li's, flashed with red light. In the blink of an eye, Xiao Hui had already landed on top of that strange rock, making a light pong sound. In that instant, the red light from the volcanic well that shone through the layers of strange stones was blocked by Xiao Hui's body. Almost at the same time, that ball of red light in the air that had condensed into a flame-like red light ball, because it lost its light source, immediately disappeared. Suddenly, the entire world seemed to quiet down. In a blink of an eye, the entire altar hall had completely lost its light. Darkness enveloped the entire place. Ghostly held his breath, stared blankly at Xiao Hui. It was lying on that strange stone and seemed to be fine for the time being. The red light refracted from the well was blocked by its body, reflected on its stomach, every fine detail visible. The red light circulated like blood, flickering slightly on its body. Xiao Hui's body slowly started to make sounds, like the ear-piercing sounds of bones and joint striking. Ka-ka, ka-ka. Ghostly took a step forward, staring at Xiao Hui. A bad premonition rose in his heart. Xiao Hui slowly turned its head. Its pair of eyes had shockingly turned completely red, so dazzling and eye-catching in the darkness. The next moment, an abrupt change occurred. In the great hall, deep in the darkness, suddenly a desolate howl was heard, mightily and mightily. The ferocious deity stone carvings surrounding them on the ground, at the same time, one by one lit up. When the eighth ferocious deity's stone carvings also lit up, the desolate howl reverberating in the great hall had already turned mournful, filling the entire space. Not knowing when it started, this tightly sealed great hall actually started to have a wind whirling incessantly. Ghostly carried Xiao Hui and stuck it to his side. Almost at the same time, with a loud rumbling sound, all of the stone carvings shone brightly. In an instant, the red light seemed to have become tangible, rising up from the stone carvings, at the same time maintaining the original appearance of the stone carvings, turning into a flat surface condensed from red light, rising into the air. One after another, the ferocious deities turned into red light and condensed in the air. Ghostly finally saw that crooked stone carving surrounding the ferocious deity's stone carving. That was an enormous flame totem, enveloping all of the ferocious deities within it. Following the increasingly violent wind, this strange circle of light slowly rose. A moment later, it was already above Ghostly's head, stopping above him and Xiao Hui. Ghostly looked up, his palms unknowingly breaking out in cold sweat. The ferocious gods seemed to have come back to life at this moment, laughing heartily at the sky and the huge flame-shaped blood-red halo. At this moment, the darkness in the main hall had already been driven away, and the entire place was illuminated by this extremely dazzling halo. The red halo started to slowly spin, the speed gradually increasing. Even the wind in the main hall also became more and more rapid. Ghostly was in the eye of this storm, his clothes fluttering, his face also gradually turning pale, just that he still did not make any movements. The strange atmosphere in the air became heavier and heavier. The rapid, sharp wind sound seemed to be mixed with a mysterious, ferocious grin, like the legendary evil spirits from the 9 netherworlds had come to the human world. That red halo finally rose to the dome, spinning faster and faster under the plain and unadorned flagstones. The red lights scattered down like rain, like the blood rain in hell. Rumble! After spinning rapidly to the point where it was almost too much for the eyes to follow, suddenly, the red halo abruptly stopped. Without any warning, it stopped abruptly like that. The next moment, above this ball of blood-red flame, the huge flagstones, as if being summoned, moved away, with the flame totem as the center, retreated in all directions. In the blood-red light, 2 balls of fiery eyes lit up. Roar! A deep, deep roar was heard from the red light above. In that instant, the entire main hall seemed to be shaking. All of the gods at this moment were shouting together. The huge body carried an unbelievably high temperature. its entire body like burning flames. A huge beast pounced down from above. Ghostly's pupils instantly contracted, exerting strength with his feet. The soul-absorbing stick green light flourished. His entire body floated backwards, avoiding this thunder-like pounce. The huge beast, surrounded by the raging flames, roared angrily, slowly turned its head and stared at Ghostly. For some reason, Ghostly suddenly felt his mouth was dry. Like those strange, ferocious godstone carvings. He had never seen it before. Even in the books, there were no records of this kind of fire beast in front of him. The huge body was several zhongs tall for thick and strong legs. At the end of the legs were extremely sharp claws. With a slight movement on the ground, deep claw marks were left on the hard crimson rocks. On its huge head, there was a huge bloody mouth full of sharp teeth and its pair of big eyes. There were no eyes at all, only two balls of burning flames. And on the surface of this strange beast's huge body, there was raging fire everywhere, as if the fire was part of its body. Before it could even get near, it was already unable to endure that gush of heat from afar. The huge flame totem condensed from the red light in midair seemed to be controlled by some inexplicable power at this moment. It stood upright behind the exotic beast and slowly rotated. All of the evil gods above it seemed to be the same as this fire beast, stared fiercely at this man and monkey who had disturbed the gods. Xiao Hui was in Ghost Li's embrace, but its eyes were staring intently at that strange beast. The red light in its eyes did not weaken. Instead, it became stronger. Roar! That fire beast roared again, once again pounced over. This time, Ghostly did not avoid. In fact, this strange beast body was too big. The originally spacious main hall with it standing like that did not have much space left. The soul-absorbing stick, as if being controlled by an invisible hand, floated to Ghostly. Ghostly's face was gloomy. He placed Xiao Hui on his shoulder, and then both of his hands behind the soul-absorbing stick swiftly slashed in the air. The sinister orb in front of the soul-absorbing stick immediately revealed an 8 trigrams pattern, instantly enlarged and headed towards that fire beast. The next moment, that strange beast collided with Ghost Li's 8 trigrams diagram in the air. Right now, if there was someone from Qingyun's sect here, most likely they would cheer loudly. This was the authentic Qing Yun sect's secret way, Tai Chi Xian Qing way. Taoist true way. Its power was naturally extraordinary. The fire beast's seemingly powerful pounce was actually blocked by it. Its huge body also landed on the ground. But almost at the same time, a powerful force rebounded. Ghost Li's body shook greatly. This fire beast's pounce was actually several times more powerful than the average cultivator. Although that fire beast was stopped, but its huge head lifted up, both of its eyes blazing with fire. Clearly it was not injured at all. Instead, it seemed to be even angrier. With a loud roar, it pounced over again. The huge fire totem behind it also slowly revolved and followed. Ghostly frowned tightly, was about to strike when suddenly his shoulder felt light. The monkey Xiao Hui actually leapt up, left his body, and directly pounced towards that fire beast. Ghostly was extremely shocked, involuntarily cried out, "Xiao Hui, don't!" That fire beast suddenly saw something pouncing over, was shocked with a low roar. Its body, which had just leapt up, paused. Wanted to take a good look at that thing first. Under the illumination of the red light, Xiao Hui, whose eyes were already completely red, leaped into the air. When its body, which was almost insignificant compared to the fire exotic beast, leaped to the highest point, it suddenly stopped in midair. Like the feeling of time stopping in that instant, at the same time that monkey stopped in the air, the great hall, which was filled with the fire beast's loud roars, also suddenly quietened down. Kadang! A clear and melodious sound slowly spread out. Among the innumerable red lights, a golden light rose up. Xiao Hui's body stretched out, both of its eyes tightly closed. Its entire body slowly emitted faint golden light, looking like a deity or Buddha. Between its brows, on its forehead, that dark mark suddenly started to wriggle. After a moment, Xiao Hui suddenly lifted its head, both of its hands tightly clenched, howled to the sky. Ghostly, who was standing behind and about to pounce forward, also suddenly stopped, stared blankly at Xiao Hui, who was in the middle of transforming. The dark scar between the brows wriggled more and more intensely. Suddenly, Xiao Hui shrieked again, accompanied by a tearing sound, a cry in the unseen world. The dark scar split open. A brilliant golden light shone out from within. The third eye, three-eyed spiritual monkey, the legendary, peerless, mystical beast that was the spirit of all living things, in this flame-like great hall, suddenly transformed with a loud bang. Chapter 218. The fire beast looked up at Xiao Hui, who was surrounded by the golden light in the air. After a long while, it suddenly roared. Instantly, the temperature in the great hall rose rapidly, almost like a sea of fire. In its roar, its attention clearly shifted from ghostly to Xiao Hui. Its four limbs stamped on the ground, suddenly leapt up, pouncing toward Xiao Hui. Its entire body was burning fiercely. Even that mysterious fire totem halo which kept revolving behind it seemed like it was on fire, extremely bright. Under the pressure of the overwhelming fire, the golden light on Xiao Hui's body was suppressed. The fire surged up crazily, looking like it was about to swallow Xiao Hui. At this moment of imminent peril, a figure blocked in front of Xiao Hui. It was ghostly. He leapt up and floated in front of Xiao Hui. The black soul-devouring stick, under the instigation of his true power, lit up entirely, emitting rays of dark green light, mixed with faint traces of blood. In an instant, that beast's huge head had already pounced in front of Ghostly, facing such a tyrannical and ferocious monster. Ghostly could even clearly see the sharp teeth in that ferocious mouth. Deep inhale. Sparks danced in the sky. A word of Buddhist incantation suddenly appeared, 3 chi in front of Ghostly, shining with golden light. The next moment, green air flashed on his face. The moment before the beast's huge claw reached the incantation, the golden light on the incantation at the same time turned faint green. Ever since Qing Yun's sect and Tianyin Temple were established, great Brahmin wisdom and Tai Chi Xianxing Wei, these two great true ways were displayed at the same time. The sky full of fire like mountains and seas. The beast roared, struck down with its palm. The enormous fire power struck on the incantation. In that instant from the point of contact, an unparalleled radiance burst out. The mountain-like flames instantly flew back, and the gigantic exotic beast was actually bounced back. The entire hall was shaken by an invisible force. That fire beast landed on the ground, seemed shocked, abruptly raised its head. A pair of burning, huge eyes looked at that figure. The incantation's golden light gradually dimmed and then dissipated, slowly disappearing in the air. Ghost Li's body landed on the ground. His feet touched the ground, and he staggered, his face turning pale. The soul-absorbing stick unhurriedly flew down, floated in front of its master. In that patch of fire, it was still emitting faint dark green light. The corner of Ghost Li's mouth twitched slightly, and then he held it in, but after a moment, he moved again, and finally his shoulder shook. With a sound, he spat out a mouthful of blood. The bright red blood seemed to turn into a red mist, drifting in front of him, just like that mournful and sorrowful rain many years ago. Bit by bit, drop by drop, the blood wrapped around the black stick. The former fire stick quietly swallowed every drop of blood, quietly sucking it into the stick without leaving a trace. On the sinister orb, the red light gradually brightened. A cold feeling spread through Ghost Li's body. The ruthlessness that he had been suppressing finally could not be suppressed anymore. Ghostly howled to the sky, his eyes red. In that instant, thousands of thoughts flashed past his mind. Endless blood and bones like a nightmare assaulted him, twining around him. His trembling hands slowly clenched tightly, as if he could no longer endure the boiling blood in his body because of the blood. Opposite him, the 8 ferocious deities on the fire totem on the beast's back also faintly glimmered, as if responding to the bloodlust and murderous energy on his body. The current Ghost Li seemed to have transformed into a cruel, ferocious beast, confronting the fire beast in front of him. The great hall was scorching hot. Even the air seemed to be burning. Oh, suddenly, that fire beast gave a low roar. For the first time, it seemed to have some uneasiness. Xiao Hui, who was in the air, landed in front of Ghostly. That eye on its forehead glimmered with golden light. Numerous places on Xiao Hui's body at the same time made sounds of the joints trembling violently. Then, under the watchful eyes of Ghost Li and that fire beast, Xiao Hui started to mutate. The originally small and skinny body suddenly bulged with numerous thick and solid muscles. In the sounds of the joints, Xiao Hui's body slowly grew bigger. In the moment that the human eyes could see so clearly, a monkey that was originally not even half a human's height, under the rapid increase in muscles and bones, in a blink it had already surpassed Ghost Li's body. Chunks of muscles bulged out from Xiao Hui's arms, chest, and abdomen. Its head enlarged. Long and sharp fangs even appeared in its mouth, white and emitting a cold glint, protruding from its huge mouth. The palms that were originally used to pluck fruits also grew sharp claws. Finally, when this monstrous monkey had transformed into a ferocious beast that was almost as tall as the fire beast, it slowly opened its eyes, that pair of eyes under the third eye. Bright red and bloodthirsty eyes, mixed with the golden light, dazzling. The originally vast altar hall, right now with the sudden addition of two such huge beasts, immediately became extremely crowded. Xiao Hui's eyes were filled with ferocity. Staring at that fire beast, its mouth roared incessantly. The giant flaming beast turned slowly. All that could be seen in its eyes were flames. There was no expression on its face at all, but it could be seen that facing this ferocious monkey that had suddenly transformed, it also had some fear. Suddenly, Xiao Hui roared. The third eye, glinting with golden light, suddenly shone brightly. A beam of golden light swiftly shot out. That fire beast, with a low growl, moved aside. The golden light hit the ground. With a boom, immediately a huge pit was formed on the hard scarlet rocks. Before the fire beast could react, Ghostly, who had been standing behind Xiao Hui, had already leapt up. In an instant his entire body was enveloped by a strange light. The soul-devouring stick in front of him with a sound charged towards the fire beast. Almost at the same time, Xiao Hui also pounced towards the fire beast. The fire in the fire beast's eyes instantly blazed to the extreme. Suddenly, Ghostly, whose heart was filled with bloodlust and was about to attack the beast with all his strength, the inferno mirror on his right arm seemed to suddenly awaken, burst out a strong, pure yang, far stronger than ever before, charging towards the sinister orb's ruthless energy in Ghost Li's meridians. Ghost Li's body shook greatly. His face almost immediately turned pale. His body in midair seemed to be hit by a huge force. In that instant, his entire body seemed to be pierced by thousands of sharp knives at the same time. That pure yang energy in his body seemed to be stimulated by the sinister orb's cold, ruthless energy, inconceivably quickly turned into a scorching, hot, burning flame, filled every meridian in his body, fighting incessantly with the sinister orb's cold energy. His entire body instantly collapsed. His entire body powerlessly fell from the sky, heavily landed on the ground. And the soul-devouring stick, without its master's urging, immediately as if it had intelligence, flew back and with a sound landed on his body. Ziho! Xiao Hui's three eyes looked over at the same time, roared loudly, obviously unable to understand why Ghostly would suddenly do that. But almost at the same time, the fire beast opposite started to move. The fire totem halo which had been circling behind the fire beast, one of the 8 ferocious deities, suddenly flashed, following the fire beast's roar, pounced over. That ferocious deity, like a living thing, brandished its claws and bared its fangs as it charged over. Xiao Hui roared angrily. Its huge body suddenly pounced forward. The two enormous beasts collided in midair and then landed heavily on the ground. The entire great hall immediately shook incessantly. The burning flames, like toppling mountains and overturning seas, instantly burned over. Xiao Hui's strong body immediately caught on fire, but it seemed to ignore the pain from the flames. One claw clawed down, heavily hitting the fire beast's head, but almost at the same time, its lower abdomen was also struck heavily by the opponent. The two beasts roared in pain at the same time, and after a while again tangled together. Their huge bodies turned into terrifying volcanoes. Each heavy blow caused blood rain to fill the sky. Ghostly laid powerlessly on the ground, unable to move from the sudden intense pain, blood red in front of him, but for some reason, right now his mind suddenly became clear. All of the sounds of fighting suddenly faded. Those blazing flames also seemed to be far away at the horizon. The incomparable pain in his body densely eroded every inch of his skin. His eyes in the blood-red light clearly saw that ferocious deity controlled by a strange force ferociously pouncing towards him. But he did not have the slightest fear. An instant, how long was that? At the edge of life and death, what would you think of? Was it that drizzling night rain on Bamboo Mountain many years ago? Or the pale figure beside him as he fell into the endless abyss? In a daze, he saw the past, that faint smile when he first met. He slowly closed his eyes. Was he going to die? Then die. This life, it was really tiring. The next moment, the boundless darkness with heavy, ferocious intent enveloped him. Bang! The enormous force struck Ghost Lee's body directly into the air from the ground. Flying backwards, the ferocious deity, which had transformed into a ferocious figure, clung onto his body with a hideous grin. With a sound it tore his clothes, opened its ferocious mouth, about to bite his neck. Xiao Hui, who was fighting with the fire beast, heard the noise and turned its head. In that instant, both of its eyes widened. The corners of its eyes cracked, blood flowed down, streaking across its face, dripping with blood, almost like a nine-nether evil spirit. It made a mournful, shrill cry. Not knowing where a burst of strength came from, Xiao Hui's eyes glowed red like blood was about to drip out. With a loud roar, actually flung the fire beast away. But almost at the same time, the fire beast's claws tore a huge wound on its abdomen. Blood like a raging wave spurted out. But Xiao Hui did not even look at its body, turned towards Ghost Lee's direction, pouncing with all its might. That man who was entangled by the ferocious deity, right now reflected in its red like blood eyes. The distance that was so close, could it be the end of the world? The wind howled. The ferocious intent surged. The ferocious deity's sharp teeth bit on Ghost Lee's neck. Xiao Hui, who was still several zhongs away, made a despairing whimper and roar. A faint red light suddenly shone out from Ghost Lee's tattered clothes. For some reason, that ferocious deity suddenly froze, motionless. Inferno mirror, that ancient fire totem wrapped in the dark green jade ring, right now slowly lit up, emitting a red light, shone on the ferocious deity's body. Almost without any resistance, with a sound, that ferocious deity's body, like a whale sucking in water, was sucked in by the inferno mirror, disappeared in a blink. The next moment, Xiao Hui pounced to Ghost Lee's side, but before it could carefully examine Ghost Lee's injuries, the sound of the wind behind it, that fire beast again pounced over. The wound on Xiao Hui's abdomen. Blood gushed out like a fountain. It was obvious that its movements were already strenuous, but subconsciously, Xiao Hui still stood in front of Ghost Lee, who had already lost consciousness. Just that fire beast suddenly stopped. Its huge head slowly turned. Its fiery eyes landed on the inferno mirror tied to Ghost Lee's right arm. The ancient fire totem glimmered with a blurry red light, as if it was telling something. Xiao Hui vigilantly watched the fire beast. But this beast suddenly seemed to be behaving strangely, as if it could not believe, looked at the inferno mirror and then at Ghost Lee and Xiao Hui. Its huge head turned, seemed to be agitated, incessantly making deep growls. After a while, as if it finally could not resist anything, the fire beast suddenly bent its two front legs, its body crouched down, its huge head slowly nodded 3 times towards that inferno mirror, and then with a deep growl, the flames on its body suddenly dimmed, all the flames disappeared, and finally, even this huge beast body also slowly dissipated from the space. And that 8 ferocious deity, fire totem, after losing the fire beast, also slowly disappeared. Chapter 219. The entire Great Hall suddenly quieted down. All of the ferocious flames had disappeared. The Great Hall was once again enveloped in the faint red light emitted from that volcanic well. Only above their heads, where the strange fire beast had appeared, revealed a circular hole leading to the second level. Xiao Hui quietly called out, slowly sat on the ground, sat beside Ghostly, quietly looked at its master, and then looked at the huge wound on its stomach. It quietly waited. The pain gradually faded. His life instincts pulled him out from the darkness. Ghostly slowly opened his eyes. The immense pain was like an invisible raging fire that had just burned through every inch of his skin. It didn't leave any marks, but it had already exhausted him. He breathed deeply. His hand felt icy cold. The fire stick was still beside his hand, accompanying him. Fire stick! He suddenly laughed bitterly in a low voice. Cries were heard beside him. Ghostly turned to look. Xiao Hui was crouching beside him, looking at himself. Its huge body had already turned back, and was once again the little monkey nestled beside his hand. Just that the wound on its stomach had changed color from blood, and the third eye glimmering with faint golden light on its forehead were reminding him of what had just happened. Ghostly suddenly smiled, faced Xiao Hui, slowly sat up, stretched out his hand, and gently stroked its head. Xiao Hui grinned, called out twice, used its hand to scratch its head. The red light in the great hall gently flowed, shone on their figures. Ghostly secretly checked his body, only felt his body was exhausted, but the meridians in his body, after that unbelievable internal battle, seemed to be fine. Just that he could not understand why the usually gentle and pure Inferno mirror suddenly became so violent. After thinking about it, it seemed to be related to this Inferno altar that he was in, and that strange fierce formation just now. Ghostly tidied up his torn clothes, and then tore off a piece of cloth, carried Xiao Hui over, carefully bandaged the wound on its stomach. Xiao Hui lowered its head, its 3 eyes blinked, looked at the abdomen that suddenly had a belt-like thing, called out twice, seemed very curious, its hands touching it nonstop. Right now, Ghostly's strength was gradually recovering. Carrying Xiao Hui, he stood up and looked around. The hall was riddled with scars. Traces of a fierce battle could be seen everywhere. But for some reason, most of the scars were on the ground and not on the walls. And the circle of stone carvings under his feet, at this moment, had regained its calmness, staying there as if it was alive. He stood there and pondered for a moment. For a moment, he could not figure out how long he had been in this Inferno altar, but obviously that Shangwan Elder who was guarding this place had not returned yet. Most likely because he knew that the Inferno altar was protected by a fire beast. That was why he dared to leave. Then his gaze fell on the round hole above his head that led to the second floor. Some of the red light in the hall floated up, but from below, only a small part of the cave entrance could be seen. It seemed to be dark beside it. Ghostly looked at the darkness, suddenly said to Xiao Hui, "Let's go up and take a look, all right?" Xiao Hui grinned in his arms. Ghostly gently patted its head, and then placed Xiao Hui on his shoulder, took a deep breath. His entire body slowly floated up, left the ground, and flew towards that cave entrance. He ascended very slowly, extremely carefully. Nobody knew if there were any other monsters guarding this mysterious altar. But the surroundings were quiet. Until he reached the second level of the altar, there were no attacks. Apart from the faint red glow coming from the round hole on the second level of the altar, the surroundings were pitch black. However, in the depths of the darkness, there was an object that was glowing faintly. Ghostly walked over there. It was a stone platform that was about half the height of a person and had the shape of a pillar. The entire stone was completely different from the crimson rocks around it. At the same time that it emitted a faint coolness, the glimmer that was emitted from the stone pillar was actually continuously changing colors. Sometimes it was slightly red, sometimes it was light purple, sometimes it was light yellow, and sometimes it was dark green. It was extremely beautiful, and on the flat surface of the stone platform, there was a circular indentation. Engraved beside it were 3 words, Inferno Mirror. Ghostly's gaze unexpectedly landed on his right arm. in the middle of his tattered clothes, indistinctly revealed the primitive fire totem of the Inferno mirror. He gently untied the treasure, stared at it for a moment, and then placed it into that indentation. It was actually flawless. After a while, a deep sound was heard from above. Ghost Li and Xiao Hui looked up at the same time, the stone slab above them. In the deep sound, slowly opened up, revealing a cave. Almost at the same time, the surrounding temperature unbelievably dropped, from the initial scorching heat to cold like ice. Against that faint red light, they could even see the cold white air drifting down from that round hole to the third level. The extreme hot and extreme cold air actually existed in this inferno altar at the same time. Ghostly revealed a faint smile, took the inferno mirror from the stone platform, and kept it in his bosom. Without saying anything more, again flew towards the highest level. The surrounding air turned colder and colder. The heat from the volcano below seemed to be unable to affect this place at all, to the extent that when Ghostly stepped onto the third level, he realized that there was a thick layer of ice beneath his feet. There was nothing giving off light here, but after Ghost Li's eyes slowly adapted to the surroundings, he discovered faint blue lights, gently emitted from every corner. That was the solid ice that had been frozen for an unknown number of years, as if softly telling something. He slowly walked forward, and the sound of his footsteps on the ice spread out, breaking the silence that seemed to have existed since ancient times. Suddenly, a deep and slightly surprised, gentle yet desolate female voice faintly sounded in the darkness. "You are not Shangwan Su?" Ghostly immediately stopped. The next moment, his eyes stared intently at the deepest part of the darkness, unhurriedly said, "I am not." That voice was silent for a while, slowly said, "Who are you?" Ghostly asked in reply, "And who are you?" The blue light emitted from the solid ice seemed to flash. That female voice was silent. The next moment, two balls of faint light, like endless deep eyes, flashed in the deepest part of the darkness, staring at Ghost Li and Xiao Hui on his shoulder. Finally, it landed on the soul-absorbing stick in his hand. "That monkey on your shoulder is the three-eyed spiritual monkey, right?" Ghost Li's heart turned cold, did not reply. Instead, Xiao Hui, who was crouching on his shoulder, bared its teeth and called out into the darkness, as if demonstrating its might. That female voice did not mind, slowly said, "That magical weapon in your hand, is its sinister orb, and the ghost's soul-absorbing orb, smelted using the evil sect's blood-refining great skill?" Ghost Li's body shook, his pupils contracted. That female voice seemed to softly laugh, unhurriedly said, "Soul-absorbing orb and sinister orb are the most vicious and evil objects in the world, especially sinister orb. It contains ruthless evil power, invades one's soul without form. I can see that although your skills are not low, but the evil power has already penetrated deep into your body. Sooner or later you will go mad and die." Ghostly coldly said, "Who exactly are you?" That female ignored him and continued, "That monkey beside you, although it is known as the spirit of all living beings, and right now, its heaven eyes already opened, but I see that under its heaven eyes golden light, there's an indistinct red ferocious glint. It must be because it has been accompanying you and has been invaded by the sinister orb's evil power. Given time, it will also become a savage beast that slaughters living beings. Why not change its name to Three-Eyed Spiritual Monkey?" Ghostly was greatly shocked. For a moment he was speechless. Xiao Hui's abnormality, he had also gradually noticed it, but now that this mysterious female had so clearly set it out, for a moment his mind was filled with 1,000 thoughts. He was at a loss. Instead, Xiao Hui pretended to be angry, hissed loudly, and bared its sharp teeth at the darkness. That female voice suddenly laughed, faintly said, "You are angry. Hee. Why do you have to be like this? We are both natural spiritual beings. You understand me. I also understand you. Why do you have to lust after the worldly prosperity and human relations?" Ghostly recollected his emotions, calmed his mind, his eyes gradually turned cold. The soul-absorbing stick in his hand also gradually glowed with dark green light. Coldly said, "If you still don't show yourself, Don't blame me for being impolite." That female voice snorted and said, "You are not Fun Xiang Valley disciple and can actually reach the third level of this inferno altar. You really have some abilities. Is Shangwan old ghost already dead? But even if he's not here, you are actually able to break through the 8 savage inferno formation guarded by the red flame beast." Suddenly, that female voice suddenly rose sharply, as if she suddenly thought of something. Her voice surprisingly had an additional trace of agitation. "Not right, no matter how high your skills are, other than Shangwan Old Ghost, in the entire world only. Only the Inferno Mirror can open the third level of this altar. You have the Inferno Mirror with you?" Speaking till the end, as if reflecting her agitated voice, instantly the hard eyes around Ghostly lit up with blue light at the same time. Ghostly frowned, but before he could react, that pair of faint eyes in the darkness had already landed on the Inferno Mirror in his bosom. The ancient flame totem seemed to be slowly burning. "Inferno Mirror!" A sharp, long cry. That female voice instantly rose, mixed with innumerable pain, surprise, sorrow, despair, and a trace of desolation. "Why? Why is the Inferno Mirror with you? Where is Xiaolu? Where is Xiaolu?" She screamed, as if she had lost her mind. On the mysterious third level of the Inferno altar, deep in the darkness, suddenly blue light exploded. Countless shadows danced under the faint blue light, swam restlessly in the gap between the darkness and light. A figure, as if flying out from the dark abyss, and also as if walking out from the ancient desolation, like a demon gigantic figure, danced in this space. Ghostly was stunned. Even if he saw something even more ferocious and terrifying, he had already mentally prepared himself. But when he saw clearly that figure in front of him, he was still stunned. Memories from long ago instantly surged up, filled his mind. Even Xiao Hui, who was on his shoulder screaming at the front, he turned a deaf ear. Behind that figure, there seemed to be 9 shadows dancing like a nightmare. He slowly, with a bitter voice said, "Nine-tailed celestial fox." Chapter 220. The divine land was vast and boundless. In the world, other than humans who were known as the most intelligent of all living beings, there were countless other living beings living together with humans in this world. For example, poultry like chickens, ducks, pigs, and dogs, ferocious beasts like jackals, wolves, tigers, and leopards were all common and familiar to humans. And since ancient times, there were many strange stories and legends circulating in the world, in the remote and desolate lands of the divine land, in the barren mountains and unruly rivers. There were some ancient spiritual beasts, primitive species, surviving in the human world. For thousands of years, countless hot-blooded youths who traversed mountains and rivers to capture dragons and demons had always been talked about enthusiastically by people, passed down by word of mouth. And in these numerous legends, the Fox Demon Clan, perhaps not the most ferocious and most powerful monsters, but without a doubt, the Fox Demon was the most mystical, mysterious, and even the only legend with some worldly wisdom. When ancient beasts like the Blackwater mystical viper became the target of countless youths to prove their cultivation abilities, the Fox Demon in people's mouths seemed to carry a trace of ambiguity. Although there had always been legends of fox demons injuring people, but different from other monster legends, the Fox Demon Clan would often leave behind touching stories of falling in love with humans. In the various legends of evil monsters scourging the human world, it was really a very outstanding and unconventional strange thing. Of course, these were all just the ordinary people, the common people. In the eyes of the real cultivators, the Fox Demon Clan was a group of extremely intelligent and even cunning creatures. Their powers were far from the Blackwater mystical viper, that kind of unfathomable ancient demonic beast, but these monsters understood human emotions, and even in the legends, when their cultivation reached a certain level, the Fox Demon Clan actually had the ability to transform into a human. This might be the reason why those sad and beautiful human-demon love stories were spread. And in the Fox Demon Clan, there was a most intelligent and most mysterious branch. It was said that as their cultivation increased, The tails behind them would continue to grow. 100 years of cultivation would have 3 tails, called demon fox. 1,000 years of cultivation would have 6 tails, called demon fox. And at the stage of 9 tails, it would already be the supreme realm of the world's evil creatures. Nobody knew how many years of cultivation it would take to achieve this. But in the legends, when the fox demon reached 9 tails, it would already be an exceptional evil creature, magical power, called nine-tailed celestial fox. It was just that this legend was too mystical. Many people did not know about it, but in Ghost Lee's heart, it was like a mirror. Not because of anything else, but because 10 years ago, under the Fire Dragon Cave, the figure of the fox demon who died for love was the first time in his life that his once firm belief received an impact. Even now, while he occasionally dreamed of it at night, he could still vaguely see the desolate and beautiful figure of the white fox. Rays of blue light refracted from the hard and cold ice, illuminating the altar's 3rd floor. In front of Ghost Lee and Xiao Hui, from the deepest part of the darkness, in the faint blue with some demonic glimmer, a huge figure slowly appeared. It was a huge white fox. This was the first time Ghostly saw such a huge white fox's true form. For where he stood, this white fox was actually twice his height, as tall as 2 people. Even under the dim light, the pure white fur was still so beautiful. The smooth fur was as smooth as the best silk in the Central Plains. This was an animal that made people feel beautiful at first glance, just that its body was so huge, unknowingly, it also felt somewhat terrifying. And in fact, this white fox, right now, was in a state of extreme agitation. The originally quiet altar space was now filled with the white fox's sorrowful cries and shrill cries. The pair of deep black eyes embedded on the fair skin, right now, were also filled with madness. The blue light became brighter and brighter. Unknowingly, a wind had already started blowing. Ghost Lee's clothes fluttered. Xiao Hui was shrieking loudly, baring its teeth at the white fox, making a ferocious appearance. Suddenly, the white fox made a cry. Abruptly, its front feet left the ground, actually stood up straight. Almost at the same time, Ghostly felt the surrounding ice suddenly brightened with blue light. In the rumbling sound, 2 huge ice blocks, as tall as 3 people, moved in the air, fiercely smashed towards Ghostly. Ghostly frowned tightly. The soul-absorbing stick's green light glowed, carrying him, and Xiao Hui swiftly retreated. Almost at the same time their figures disappeared, the 2 huge ice blocks collided with a loud, deafening sound, turned into ice shards, and scattered on the ground. Without waiting for them to stop, the solid ice emitting blue light on all 3 layers of the altar lit up at the same time. In an instant, the strange demonic power in this space flourished. Innumerable big and small ice cubes slowly floated into the air. Looking at the colorful glitter, it was incomparably beautiful and spectacular. Ghostly frowned even tighter. This 9-tailed celestial fox was indeed extremely powerful. These few years, he had met all kinds of demonic beasts. Other than the Blackwater mystical viper, that unfathomable ancient beast, this 9-tailed celestial fox was the most powerful. Just that for some reason, when his eyes passed through the innumerable, sparkling, beautiful, enchanting blue light and saw that white figure, with its slightly crazed and deeply sorrowful eyes, a certain emotion that he had not seen for many years, like that pair of demon foxes who sacrificed themselves for love, started to linger in his heart. No matter what, he was not willing to attack this white fox. Just that while he was hesitating, the 9-tailed celestial fox instead gave a sharp cry. Instantly, the innumerable ice blocks floating in the air, like being commanded by a mysterious force, all of them with lightning speed, whizzed over. Ghost Lee's face turned cold, hugged Xiao Hui to his chest. At the same time, he controlled the soul-absorbing stick to fly to the side. For a moment, the sky was filled with blue light flashing, the ice like rain. The sounds of the ice blocks colliding were incessant. In every split second, innumerable pieces of blue ice pursued that green figure. Just that this green figure was like a ghost, often dodging in between, in the sky full of ice rain, either left or right, or up or down, evading the seemingly endless layers of ice rain. The white fox's shrill cries became even sharper, just that for some reason, in the anger, it seemed to lack energy. In the midst of the fierce battle, suddenly a green figure flashed. Ghost Lee's figure somehow passed through the layers of ice, dashed near the white fox. The white fox was startled. Its beautiful white fur moved without wind, waved its front claws, looked like it was about to use some kind of strange spell. Unexpectedly at this moment, a dark red light leapt up from its back. Almost at the same time, the white fox's body shook, as if it was struck heavily, its eyes in confusion. The next moment, its demonic power dissipated, its body actually fell down. And the next moment, the green figure floated over. A pale hand stretched out from the light, swiftly grabbed the white fox's neck. The white fox gave a low cry. Its eyes filled with pain and helplessness, but looking at its expression, it closed its eyes as if it had accepted its fate, closed its eyes to await death. His hand carried the cold but still soft fur. Ghost Lee's hand landed on the white fox's throat. The white fox's huge body was in front of him, but for some reason, right now, it was like a fragile little bird in his hand. Xiao Hui crouched on Ghost Lee's chest, suddenly quietly called out a few times. Ghost Lee quietly looked at the white fox before him, slowly withdrew his hand. The white fox slowly opened its eyes. What entered its eyes was the man standing in front of it. A man and a fox, just like that, gaze at each other. Rumble. Accompanied by a series of rumbles, the ice pieces dancing in the air behind Ghost Lee lost their demon power and started to fall down, colliding with each other, ice crystals splattering everywhere. There was even a white, icy cold mist dissipating, rushing over from behind, completely covering Ghost Lee and the white fox's figures. After a long time, the ice dust gradually settled. Ghost Lee and the white fox appeared again. Xiao Hui had climbed up Ghost Lee's shoulder again. Its three eyes blinked, looked at Ghost Lee, and then looked at the white fox before it, and then looked around again, as if it suddenly became interested in the beautiful ice crystals scattered all over the ground, jumped down from Ghost Lee's shoulder, sat on the ground, and casually picked up a few beautiful ice pieces emitting faint blue light, fiddled with them. The white fox's eyes shifted from Ghost Lee to Xiao Hui, looked deeply, and then back to Ghost Lee. After a while, it spoke. "Why didn't you kill me?" Its words right now sounded like it had already calmed down. Ghost Lee did not answer immediately. His eyes unexpectedly looked behind the white fox. Very soon, he found what he was guessing. A dark red iron chain that was as thick as a human's arm was locked around the white fox's waist. Looking at it now, the iron chain was faintly glowing with a red light. Even from far away, one could feel the strange magic power. Just now, when the white fox suddenly lost its strength in the intense battle, obviously it was the effect of this prohibition. It was not strange, if not for such a powerful prohibition. With the legendary nine-tailed celestial fox's peerless demonic power, how could this inferno alter trap it? The white fox looked at Ghost Lee. Ghost Lee did not answer its question. It also did not seem to mind, because what it was concerned about was actually another matter. "Where is Xiao Lu? Did you kill it and then took the inferno mirror?" Its voice sounded very low, very tired. Ghost Lee was silent. After a long while, unhurriedly said, "The Xiao Lu that you were talking about, is it a six-tailed demon fox with six tails?" The white fox's huge body shook slightly, lowered its head. "It is dead." Ghost Lee's voice was not loud, but it was very clear. The white fox's eyes looked at the ground in front of it, faintly said, "How did it die?" 10 years ago, me and two friends heard that there was an evil creature causing mischief under Shaoqi Town Blackstone Cave and went to investigate. Ghost Lee's face was as calm as water, indifferently recounted the past. For a moment, the huge space was silent. Only his voice gently drifted, and occasionally Xiao Hui's playing sounds were heard. In the end, it saw that things could not be done, and the three-tailed demon fox was also dead. It decided to commit suicide before it died. It tied the inferno mirror to my hands. Chapter 221. Ghostly took out the inferno mirror from his bosom. under the faint blue light. The ancient flame totem also seemed to be burning gently. The white fox stared blankly at the inferno mirror, as if it was crazy. After a long time, it quietly said, "Xiao Lu is my son." The silence seemed to be dead. Ghostly looked at the sorrowful white fox in front of him, suddenly felt a suffocating feeling. Engraved in his heart, that white fox figure that fell into the scorching lava was as clear as if it was right before his eyes. 10 years seemed like it was just yesterday. What was it quietly changed our hearts? "The one who killed your son, I also have a part in it," Ghostly indifferently said. "In the future, if you have the chance, just come and kill me." The white fox raised its head, looked deeply at him. For some reason, Ghostly suddenly felt that the white fox was smiling, with thousands of years of vicissitudes looking back, with a faint, sorrowful smile. "It was able to give you the inferno mirror. I am its mother. Don't tell me I still don't know its feelings at that time." The white fox faintly said, slowly turned around. The iron chains locked around its waist made an ear-piercing sound, imprisoning it. Ghostly watched the white fox slowly walking into the darkness. Suddenly, an inexplicable impulse blurted out, "What can I help you with?" The white fox paused, but did not turn around, just that its voice suddenly had a faint agitation. "You are willing to help me?" Ghostly did not speak, did not answer. The white fox slowly turned around. At this moment, suddenly, its black and deep eyes seemed to glow with a strange light. 300 years ago, our Fox Demon clan snatched the Inferno Mirror from Funxiang Valley, but almost all of us died, other than Xiao Lu, who luckily escaped. Only I survived and was imprisoned in this Inferno altar, suffering the torment of the Inferno refinement. My powers were even suppressed by this Inferno refinement and the 8 savage Inferno formation under the Inferno altar, suffering day and night. It sneered, said, "If Funxiang Valley did not want to know the whereabouts of the Inferno Mirror from me, they would have killed me long ago." Ghostly silently nodded. The white fox glanced at him and said, "This Inferno refinement is a heaven and earth strange object, strong yang blazing. Once it is locked, only those who know Funxiang Valley's secret incantation can open it. But other than that, as long as you have the Inferno Mirror, you can still open it." Ghostly's gaze slowly turned to the Inferno Mirror in his hand. A faint warm feeling emitted from that ancient flame totem on the Inferno Mirror. The white fox's voice continued in front. "The Inferno Mirror is the essence of all flames, a heaven-opening divine weapon. As long as you walk to the end of the stone wall behind me, there will be a cylindrical stone platform. The mystic fire-smelting furnace will extend out from there. At the same time, it will go deep into the underground volcano magma and absorb endless heat energy from it. You place the Inferno Mirror on the stone platform, and you'll be able to undo the Inferno refinement. Without this prohibition, just based on the fact that there is no Inferno Mirror presiding over the 8 savage Inferno formation, it will not be able to trap me." Towards the end, the white fox's voice trembled slightly. It was obvious that it was agitated. Ghostly did not speak. His face was as calm as water. The white fox looked at him. The next moment, a deep disappointment appeared in its eyes. It suddenly gave a bitter laugh and softly said, "Do you regret it? Then forget it. Actually, in this world, who isn't like this?" Speaking, it looked like it was about to turn around again. Ghostly suddenly moved. He slowly walked forward, walked past the white fox. Xiao Hui behind him raised its head, seemed to be interested in the situation here. With 2 or 3 leaps, it jumped over and landed on Ghostly's shoulder. Ghostly walked past the white fox. The white fox also turned around, its huge body accompanying Ghostly. For some reason, its eyes seemed to have a strange glint. "Young man, why do you want to help an evil beast?" Ghostly did not turn back, did not change his countenance. The white fox following behind him could not even see his expression, just that after a moment, it heard that man, walking alone in the darkness, quietly muttering to himself, "Actually, in this world, who isn't like this? 10 years ago, when I personally put the 2 of them into the lava. 10 years ago, under the Juxian formation, when I watched her fall from the sky. The white fox stopped. At the end of the inferno smelting path, there was an extremely powerful prohibition on evil beasts. It could not go forward. And Xiao Hui at this moment also seemed to feel something, jumped down from Ghostly's shoulder, stopped beside the white fox. And Ghostly did not stop. The white fox quietly watched. The darkness in the darkest corner gently spilled down, swallowing that man's figure. It suddenly sighed. After a moment, it turned its huge fox head, approached Xiao Hui. Xiao Hui, facing this evil beast which was 100 times bigger than itself, did not show any fear, called out twice. Its 3 eyes looked at the white fox. "Is he also a heartbroken person?" The white fox faintly said. Xiao Hui blinked, called out, at the same time using its hand to scratch its head. The white fox smiled faintly. Its laughter was filled with vicissitudes of sorrow. "Your skills are not enough. Your spiritual intelligence just awakened. The love of the people in the world. How would you know?" It softly muttered. Its voice gradually became softer and softer, indistinctly heard. "There are such infatuated men in the world. That's why after hundreds and thousands of years, we will still be deeply attached to him." The atmosphere became more and more austere. The scene was quiet. The mere people stared angrily at the group of people led by Shangwan, Su from Funxiang Valley, and over at the Funxiang Valley side, they were terrified. Quite a number of disciples had already started to secretly look around. The cold wind blew past. The branches and leaves danced lightly in the dark night. Low, ghostly cries were heard, making one's heart turn cold. Shangwan Su frowned tightly, his face grim. It was fine that this unknown murderer was highly skilled. With his cultivation, he definitely would not be afraid. But for such a highly skilled person to be so vicious and merciless, and obviously wanted to incite a conflict between Funxiang Valley and the Mere People barbarians, it was really worrying. Could it be Funxiang Valley's 100 years long grand plan finally still leaked out? With that thought, even though Shangwan Su was highly skilled and had a firm mind, his heart couldn't help but be in a mess. But he was, after all, not an ordinary person. After a moment, he had already calmed down. He knew that right now, that mysterious murderer was lurking in the dark. He must not lose his composure. And in these few hundred years, it was really the first time someone was so dared to be so presumptuous in Funxiang Valley. If he was not taught a good lesson, most likely in the future, even cats and dogs would dare to come and create trouble. Shangwan Su composed himself, moved his head to the side. Li Sun understood and walked forward. Shangwan Su coldly said, "Pass down the order. All the disciples move out, seal off all the exits in the valley, and also release all the red-eyed eagles, hover in the air, must not let this murderer escape." Li Sun nodded, hesitated for a moment, quietly said, "Teacher, uncle." Then the valley master. Shangwan Su shook his head, said, "Since the valley master asked you to pass down the order for me to settle this matter tonight, it must be because he is still unable to attend. You also know he..." Halfway through, Shangwan Su suddenly stopped, looked up at Li Sun. "Later on, I will naturally explain to him." Li Sun lowered his head, said, "Yes, disciple will do it now." Speaking, he turned and left. When his heroic figure walked back, the surrounding Funxiang Valley disciples all made way for him. And Yanhong, who had been standing beside him since the beginning, heard the conversation between him and Shangwan Su. A pair of bright eyes watched Li Sun's figure. A strange glint indistinctly flashed. Li Sun's figure very quickly disappeared into the deep darkness of Funxiang Valley. There was a commotion among the Mere people. A few of them at the same time made strange cries. That tall merperson who was the leader spoke a few words with the other monsters. When he turned back, his face was already full of anger. Incessantly. Shangwan Su frowned. Sun Tu, who was beside, had already translated. "They're asking us to quickly hand over the murderer who killed their tribe leader. If not, they will kill all of us." Shangwan Su snorted, coldly looked at those Mere people. Those Mere people were obviously fearful of Shangwan Su. For a moment they were stunned, but after their barbaric nature came up, more Mere people started to roar angrily. Shangwan Su knew that these Mere people barbarians could not be judged with common sense. And with Funxiang Valley's big matter at hand, it was definitely not the time to fall out with these southern barbarian tribes, and that exceptional figure hidden in the 10,000 great mountains, not only him, even the highly skilled Valley Master Yunilon was also wary of him. He was thinking of how to temporarily appease these barbaric tribes. Unhurriedly spoke, "Everyone, today's matter, Shangwansu will definitely give all of you an explanation, but for the time being I will have to trouble all of you to stay here." Before he finished, suddenly, without any warning, the ground beneath his feet shook violently. The shaking was so violent and sudden that many of the Funxiang Valley disciples and mere people were caught off guard, lost their footing, and fell to the side. Shangwansu was highly skilled, naturally different from those ordinary disciples. Almost instantly steadied his body. In his shock, he inadvertently saw from the corner of his eyes. Yanhong, who was standing beside him, also lost her footing, but she was only a little slower than him. The sky has changed. No one knew who was the first to shout, but in an instant, everyone raised their heads to look at the sky. The originally pitch-black night sky suddenly turned red. Countless clouds that looked like burning flames moved quickly and revolved around a certain place. There was even the faint sound of wind and thunder. It was a magnificent sight to behold. Shangwansu was stunned. Immediately his countenance changed greatly. Almost subconsciously turned his head to look, as expected. The place where the clouds were revolving was where the mysterious inferno altar was. Shangwansu was shocked and furious. Without caring about anything else, fiercely stamped his feet. His body turned into a gray light and swiftly flew towards the inferno altar. But the moment his body rose into the air, for some reason, a faint question like lightning flashed past his mind. Yanhong's skills, how did she improve so quickly? Chapter 222. Inferno Altar. The majestic and almost indestructible enormous altar suddenly started to tremble violently. Nine-tailed celestial fox and Xiao Hui, who were at the third level of the inferno altar, were thrown to the side by this sudden huge force. But they were after all spiritual strange beasts and very quickly steadied their bodies. Deep in the darkness ahead, the dark red light gradually brightened, indistinctly revealing Ghost Li's figure. The inferno altar on the nine-tailed celestial fox's waist gradually started to brighten. From the deep dark red color, slowly became bright-colored. Looking from afar, there seemed to be a feeling of fire flowing and burning in the strange iron. The nine-tailed celestial fox quietly humphed. A trace of pain seemed to be in her eyes. Xiao Hui, who was standing beside, it looked at the nine-tailed celestial fox and then looked at that figure in the darkness. The dark red light became even brighter, shone out the stone platform in front of Ghost Li. The inferno mirror was placed on the stone platform by Ghost Li. In the unseen world, there seemed to be a soundless cry, like anger, like roar. That ancient flame totem in the middle of the inferno mirror slowly flickered, like a burning flame. Rumble. Suddenly, a deafening sound was heard from below their feet. Instantly, a gush of scorching heat gushed up from the inferno altar, turning this originally cold third level into a land of red flames. The numerous huge, solid ice around them started to melt, continuously disintegrating. The ice crystals, which were glimmering with beautiful blue light, were still shining brightly before they disappeared, illuminating the surroundings intermittently. The entire space in the roar of the heat waves and the silent dance of the ice cubes presented a rare spectacle in the world. Xiao Hui turned its head over, its three eyes blinking, grinning, staring fixedly, while the nine-tailed celestial fox seemed to completely disregard those hot and cold spectacles behind her. Her pair of fox eyes only stared at Ghost Li in the darkness beside the red light. Following the strange light on the flame totem gradually brightened. The enormous inferno altar started to make sounds. The light on the altar itself also became even brighter, looking like it was about to combust. At the same time, the pain in the nine-tailed celestial fox's eyes intensified. Even the fur around its waist, which was being refined by the inferno altar, also showed signs of turning yellow. The temperature in the surroundings rose higher and higher, and the altar beneath his feet began to rumble loudly. It sounded like the surging and roaring lava of a volcano, rising and falling violently. And in this deafening sound, strange lights flashing in the sky, the nine-tailed celestial fox's body suddenly shook. Its fox head abruptly turned, left Ghostly whom it had been staring at, and looked back. In the distance, outside the surging and imposing clamor, there was a long howl that carried incomparable rage and astonishment as it flew over at full speed. The nine-tailed heavenly fox's expression changed drastically. Her eyes were suddenly filled with anxiety. She turned her head abruptly and was about to say something. Boom! A dull thud was heard at this moment. The stone platform in front of Ghostly, under the effect of the Inferno Mirror's strange divine power, made a muffled, loud sound, as if carrying a trace of unwillingness, slowly sank down. And the Inferno Mirror also slowly floated up from the stone platform, moved to mid-air, emitting a pure red light. Following the sinking of the stone platform, the surrounding stone walls started to tremble. A deep crack started to appear, and then a second one appeared. At the same time, that Inferno altar that was deeply embedded in the stone wall also started to tremble. The trembling quickly became violent, and finally, when the seventh crack appeared on the stone wall, a loud sound was heard. The once indestructible Inferno altar, like a dead snake that had lost its life, lost all its luster, fell from a nine-tailed heavenly fox's waist onto the ground. The nine-tailed heavenly fox, in between ice and fire, darkness and light, howled to the sky. That mournful and distant sound reverberated far away, and finally merged with the angry volcano roaring below, resounding incessantly. In that instant, as if it was the infuriated flame power, the surging heat waves under everyone's feet rumbled at the same time. The deafening sound reverberated up from below. The next moment, numerous cracks appeared on the solid stone slabs below. Ghostly grabbed the Inferno Mirror and kept it in his bosom, turned around, and quickly walked back. Xiao, he called out twice, jumped up to his shoulder in 2 or 3 leaps. White smoke rapidly condensed around the nine-tailed celestial fox's body. In an instant, it thickened and covered its white fox body. After a while, a strange soft sound was heard. Under the white smoke that was being eroded by the increasingly hot heat waves, a human figure gradually appeared. Hands as white as jade, indistinctly transparent under the blazing fire, as if thin blood could be seen flowing gently. Smooth shoulders, perfectly round and flawless, indistinctly undulating like gentle mountain peaks, so mysterious and out of place in this violent world. Ghostly could not see the human figure's face clearly and did not have the time to look again. As if finally unable to hold it in any longer, the volcano that had been dormant for countless years had erupted beneath their feet. The ground shook violently. Everything collapsed. The air was so hot that it seemed like it was burning. Even breathing and was like hot flames. A deafening sound rumbled out from the depths of the ground. The already fragile stone slabs instantly collapsed and fell. Where the green light flashed, Ghostly's expression was grim. Leapt up, the nine-tailed heavenly fox in that ball of white smoke. Its voice was heard above. Ghostly did not have time to think. Flew up, and indeed in a short while, the solid stone wall above him also collapsed. Ghostly, in the space that was falling like rain, used all his strength to evade and charge up. Xiao Hui called out, clutching tightly onto Ghostly's clothes. And the nine-tailed heavenly fox, shrouded in white smoke, followed closely behind Ghostly. Beneath their feet, the huge lava instantly broke through all the obstacles, like an enormous fire pillar charging up to the sky, followed closely behind them. The entire Funxiang Valley was instantly enveloped in the blazing red light. Everyone stared in shock at that enormous fire pillar charging up to the sky. Even the dark clouds in the sky were also penetrated by this immense earth force. Starting from the center of the fire pillar, the dark clouds in the sky completely turned into the color of fire, like the entire sky became a burning sea of fire. The next moment, burning ashes, huge rocks, charred ashes fell from the sky, either black or burning, like a desolate doomsday rain. No one could see ghostly and the nine-tailed heavenly fox, the red-eyed condors that were released to patrol the sky. Right now were also fleeing for their lives. How would they still bother to pursue? For a moment, other than the occasional exclamations, the people in Funxiang Valley were completely silent. Even those human fishes were awed by this heaven and earth's might. Only at the end of that fire pillar, below the inferno altar, they heard a furious voice, howling incessantly. Far away, that enormous, terrible fire pillar had already disappeared. The earth also gradually quieted down, just that in the clouds in the sky, a huge black hole was still clearly visible. The clouds around the black hole also seemed to be charred by the fire, presenting a strange golden color. After flying far away from Funxiang Valley, Ghostly landed on a remote small hill. The trees here were luxuriant. Even if the Funxiang Valley people wanted to pursue them, they would also need half a day. Moreover, the perimeter of Funxiang Valley was so big, for Funxiang Valley to pursue them, it would not be that easy. He landed on the ground. The green light flashed, and then the nine-tailed heavenly fox behind him also landed on the ground. Ghostly did not turn, stood still. There was also no sound behind him. After a moment, Ghostly indifferently said, "Do you need clothes?" For some reason, the voice behind him suddenly had a trace of light and gentle charm. "And many thanks, Gongzi." Ghostly took off his outer clothes, threw it behind him. In the midst of this, he did not turn his body at all. Just that Xiao Hui, who was crouching on his shoulder, did not look like its master at all. Its head turned around, for a moment looking at Ghostly, for a moment looking back, at times scratching its head, seemed puzzled. The soft sound of clothes being put on, in this quiet forest, was especially clear. The night sky, illuminated by the unusual clouds, gradually darkened again. Even at such a distance, he could still feel the night breeze, carrying a trace of scorching heat. "Gongzi, it's done," that female voice behind him quietly said. Ghostly did not immediately turn around, instead stood still for a moment, then slowly turned around. A girl dressed in his outer clothes stood prettily in the night, in the forest before him. Her figure was graceful and slender, and even the clothes that did not fit her could not hide her beautiful figure. The clothes to her seemed a little too big, draped over her body. The lapel fastened but still could not conceal the faint white skin exposed between the seams, in this kind of night, as if rippling faint seductive moans. Her lips were soft, her eyes charming, her nose clever, and her eyebrows graceful. Her looks like a gentle ripple that wanted to flow over and embrace you, making you intoxicated. Also like a beauty that remained eternally beautiful for thousands of years. After experiencing wind and snow, it became even more beautiful. Ghostly was silent. After a while, he turned his head. Xiao Hui crouched on the ground, looked at its master who was standing at the side, gazing afar. Ghostly had been looking at the horizon since the beginning, not knowing what he was thinking about. A fair palm stretched over. Xiao Hui turned its head, grinned, and stretched out its monkey claw. Under its gray fur, its fingers looked longer than a human's. The nine-tailed celestial fox in human form gently crouched down in front of the monkey. The lapel of her clothes fluttered. Indistinctly, a faint spring light swayed. She quietly smiled, looked at Xiao Hui with interest, and then stretched out her own jade-like palm, gently pulled Xiao Hui's fingers. Xiao Hui Ji laughed. Her eyes also seemed to be full of smiles, softly said, "I also have to thank you." Xiao Hui's eyes blinked, suddenly nodded continuously, looking very pleased with himself. That lady laughed in spite of herself, stretched out her hand and carried Xiao Hui in her bosom, stood up and unhurriedly walked to Ghostly, gazing into the distance, that stretch of mountains covered by the night. 300 years, she looked for a long while, slowly said, "An entire 300 years, ah." Ghostly turned to look at her. She was staring into the distance. Xiao Hui nestled in her arms, for some reason, was very quiet, its eyes looking at Ghostly. Looking from the side, in the gentle curves of her face, there seemed to be an inexplicable toughness. She was silent for a long time, and then suddenly sighed, shook her head, turned to Ghostly, and smiled. That beauty, like a lily blooming in the darkness. Ghostly indifferently said, "What are your plans for the future?" The nine-tailed celestial fox smiled, seemed to be at a loss, softly said, "Tell me in detail the place where Xiao Lu committed suicide. If there is a chance in the future, I want to go there to take a look." Ghostly lowered his head. A glint seemed to flash past his eyes, and then said, "It is in the north near Kongsang Mountain, a place called Shaoqi Town. 10 miles outside the town, there is a small forest. In the forest there is a black stone cave. The deepest part of the cave is there. It will not be difficult to find." The nine-tailed celestial fox smiled indifferently, nodded her head. Ghostly glanced at her, seemed to hesitate for a moment, but then stretched his hand into his bosom, took out the inferno mirror. In the night, the ancient fire totem on the inferno mirror slightly glowed, reflected in the nine-tailed celestial fox's eyes, like two small balls of fire. This, Ghostly looked at the inferno mirror in his hand, handed it over. "I will return it to you. It was originally your son's thing." The nine-tailed celestial fox was surprised, could not help but looked up at him, slowly took the inferno mirror, played with it a few times in her hands, suddenly said, "Do you know this inferno mirror is a supreme celestial weapon in the world, the essence of 10,000 fires? If you can really grasp its power and usage, together with the 8 savage inferno formation that you saw in the inferno altar, it will have the power to destroy heaven and earth." She smiled, looked at Ghostly, said, "Even so, you will still return to me?" Ghostly indifferently looked at the treasure in her hands, was silent for a moment, slowly turned around, quietly said, "What do I want it for? What do I want to destroy heaven and earth for? What I want, it cannot give it to me." The nine-tailed celestial fox looked at Ghostly, did not speak for a long time, her eyes deep like water. Suddenly, she smiled, with 300 years of vicissitudes and desolation. "Well said, well said." Ghostly looked at her, saw that her face was full of smiles, but between her brows was desolation. "These 300 years, I have not seen the light of day in the inferno altar. I don't know how many times I've thought, why did I lose my mind to steal this inferno mirror? These 300 years, if I could happily spend it with my loved ones, how good would that be?" She laughed loudly, her gentle face full of vicissitudes of beauty. She raised her hand and threw the inferno mirror over. Ghostly caught it, was stunned for a moment, said, "This was exchanged with the lives of your entire clan. Why did you?" The nine-tailed celestial fox slowly stopped laughing. The sorrow in her eyes instead became heavier. Quietly, faintly said, "I want it. What do I want it for?" Ghostly subconsciously tightened his grip on the inferno mirror, felt a trace of warmth coming from the inferno mirror. After a moment, he said, "You have been imprisoned by Funxiang Valley for 300 years. Don't want revenge?" The nine-tailed celestial fox indifferently said, Of course I want to. These 300 years, there was not a moment that I did not think about it. But just now after I escaped, looking at this stretch of night, the vast heaven and earth, suddenly I can't muster up the energy to seek revenge." She raised her eyes and looked afar. This vast heaven and earth smiled and said, "These few hundred years, I actually foolishly wasted it on this senseless magical weapon. Now let me live a comfortable life in this world for a while longer before we talk." Ghostly was silent for a moment, said, "Then maybe you will still need it in the future. Moreover, the inferno mirror is after all your son." The nine-tailed celestial fox smiled sweetly, said, "Xiaolu, didn't he already give this to you?" And her eyes assessed Ghostly, said, "You used the sinister orb and soul-absorbing orb, these kinds of extremely evil and vicious objects as magical weapons. The evil energy invaded your body deeply. From what I see, if not for the inferno mirror's pure yang energy helping you to block it, I'm afraid you would have lost your mind long ago. Your ferocious nature flared up. If you give it to me, what about yourself?" Ghostly's body shook, the pupils in his eyes contracted slightly, looked at the nine-tailed celestial fox. The nine-tailed celestial fox smiled indifferently, said, "You don't have to look at me like that. An old woman like me who has lived for thousands of years. Naturally, I know more things." Ghostly felt a little embarrassed, frowned, and finally kept the inferno mirror. The nine-tailed celestial fox stroked Xiao Hui's head, intentionally or unintentionally glanced at Ghostly, said, "Right now the evil energy in your body has already invaded deeply, although your own cultivation is profound and with the inferno mirror suppression. Therefore the sinister orb's evil energy and soul-absorbing orb's ghost power will not flare up frequently, but I expect you will definitely suffer from it frequently, and your character will become increasingly bloodthirsty. Am I right?" Ghostly right now did not dare to belittle this 1,000-year-old fox spirit's gaze, although he was hesitant, but after a moment, he finally nodded. The nine-tailed celestial fox-eyed said, "For what I see, you're able to survive until today under the sinister orb and soul-absorbing orb. It is really an anomaly. But if you want to continue living peacefully in the future, I advise you to throw away this number one evil object in heaven and earth as soon as possible." Ghostly was expressionless, slowly raised his hand. The dark soul-absorbing orb appeared in his hand, the black stick mixed with faint traces of blood, quietly lying on his palm. That extremely familiar cold feeling that seemed to have long become a part of his body slowly swam in his body. "The number one evil object in heaven and earth that you're talking about. I don't know how many times it has saved my life." Ghostly indifferently said, "You said I can only live peacefully if I throw it away, but you don't know that without it, I will not be able to live till today." He looked up at the nine-tailed celestial fox, his eyes cold, said, "And you said one thing wrong." The nine-tailed celestial fox looked at him, smiled, and said, "What?" Ghostly said, "You said it is the number one evil object in heaven and earth. Actually, it is not." The nine-tailed celestial fox frowned, said, "What did you say?" Ghostly coldly, without a trace of emotion, said, "The number one evil object in heaven and earth is not it, but—" He used his hand, pointed to his heart, coldly said, "Human heart." The nine-tailed celestial fox was stunned. In the darkness of the night, the man turned around expressionlessly. The night breeze, still carrying with it hot air, blew over from afar, ruffling their clothes. For some reason, his figure suddenly looked especially desolate. The nine-tailed celestial fox quietly looked at him. After a long time, quietly sighed, her voice faint, said something, but no one could hear clearly what exactly she said. Just when she turned and walked back, not wishing to disturb Ghostly's voice was suddenly heard from behind her. "Senior, you are experienced and knowledgeable. I have a matter of great importance. I hope you will enlighten me." The nine-tailed celestial fox was slightly surprised and turned around, only to see that Ghostly was already facing her, as if he suddenly thought of something. His face revealed a trace of excitement, a trace of desire, a trace of longing, and even a faint trace of fear. "What do you want to ask?" "A woman 10 years ago used her own blood to turn into a curse, and then forced it into her 3 souls and 7 spirits, displaying a great power. But at the moment when her soul dispersed, there was a rare treasure Hihuan bell beside her that captured her soul. So now that woman's body is immortal but completely unconscious." "Senior, you are knowledgeable. May I ask if there is any way to save her?" At the end of his voice, Ghostly actually started to tremble slightly. The nine-tailed celestial fox stared at that man, her eyes glimmering, filled with gentleness. After a moment, she resolutely nodded and said, "There is a way." You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.